Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 48, Chapter 48, White Blade and Thunderous Arrow. Chapter 48, White Blade and Thunderous Arrow. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio. After leaving Graf's mansion, Levi walked towards a nearby inn. He passed through a damp, dark alley and vaguely felt someone was following him. He turned his head to look, but there was no one. He felt something was off and silently circulated the black snake breathing technique. The black snake seed danced with his heartbeat, and wisps of black gas flowed into Levi's arms. If Levi's clothes and armor were lifted, one could see the black gas enveloping his forearm. It was ferocious and terrifying, like a dense mass of black snakes. Suddenly, he raised his head and noticed a black shadow attacking him from above. A dark blue dagger came down from above and stabbed his face. The blade was so fast that Levi only had time to block it with his arms. Slash. First, Levi's clothes were torn apart. Then, the iron rings on Levi's armguard cracked and fell to the ground. The next moment, a sharp object cutting rubber could be heard. Bang! Levi was sent flying backward, falling into the trash pile behind him. The giant black rats within were frightened and fled in all directions. Ouch! Levi did not have time to look at the wound on his arm because, the next moment, sharp throwing knives tore through the air. Levi's frost wolf breathing technique was activated to its maximum. Black gas from the frost wolf seed rushed to his legs. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he ran out of the rubbish pile with a bang, sending the rubbish flying in all directions. He used the black gas to cover his palms and pushed away these flying knives. Knives penetrated the roads on both sides. Clang! With his Frostmourne unsheathed, he activated Golden Cross / and Ripple Force. Frostmourne collided with the thin sword of the Black Shadow. The Black Shadow snorted lightly. He felt a sharp pain in his hands holding the sword. The moment the swords collided, a strange force was transmitted from the other party's long sword to his thin one, causing his light sword to tremble non-stop. It even tore his thumb and forefinger. The pain almost made him release the thin blade. He immediately changed his tactics and stabbed his sword at Levi's chest in a strange and tricky direction. Levi finally saw the shadow. It was a man wearing black leather armor and a knight suit. On his face was a beak mask like the knight who had tried to assassinate him. The Bird of Death's voice. It was this D*Ned organization again. He did not think about why the organization had found him again, nor did he have time to consider why his whereabouts had been exposed. Levi's frost wolf breathing technique and black snake breathing technique were circulated to their limits. The violent white steam directly broke through the obstruction of his clothes. Staring at Baron Levi, who was almost bathed in white gas, Knight Bernard was shocked. Generally speaking, knights could roughly determine their opponent's realm with their white gas. Baron Levy's white aura was not something that a low-level knight could possess. Usually, only mid-level knights could own it after more than 10 years of cultivation. However, the information clearly stated that Baron Levi was only 16. D*MN. Was he a 16-year-old mid-level knight? Or was this not Baron Levi? Did he target the wrong person? Even if it were a mistake, so be it. He could not care less now. He had to bring back the head of the person before him. In the blink of an eye, Bernard's rapier attacks rained down on Levi like a storm, wanting to cut his opponent into pieces. Levi had maxed out his basic swordsmanship, and his foundation was excellent. He blocked, provoked, and hacked. All kinds of movements were executed in one go, flowing like water. They were even more perfect than the experienced mid-level knight Bernard. This shocked Bernard. Levi was also shocked. This assassin was far more potent than the assassin who had tried to assassinate him. He was like a black panther walking in the shadows, skillfully dodging Levi's attacks and continuously counter-attacking Levi with even more bizarre attacks. In Levi's opinion, this assassin's strength was almost on par with Sir Fred's when he was at full power. In other words, this was a mid-level knight. A mid-level knight was one of the best among the knights. After all, high-level knights and peak knights were rare. For most people, becoming a low-level knight was the final destination. The advantage of Levi's excellent breathing technique, the black snake breathing technique, was revealed in the battle. Although he was only a low-level knight, in terms of physical fitness, he was not weaker than the mid-level knight assassin. He was even more powerful than him. In addition, he had cultivated the frost wolf breathing technique at the peak of the 4th level, so his attack speed and dodging techniques were not weaker than this assassin, who specialized in this skill. Moreover, Levi's golden cross slash made it impossible for the assassin to display his true strength. Every time he attacked, the ripple force made the mid-level knight feel like a bull had hit him. His hands and tendons felt like they were about to shatter. Levi sneered. "Ha! Die!" With a loud bang, the black snake seed unleashed its full strength. Sticky black gas covered Levi's palm, allowing him to grab the blade of the mid-level knight with his bare hands. "How dare you?" Knight Bernard was shocked. He did not expect Levi to dare to take the blade with his bare hands. Did he not want to live? "Ha! You're dying soon. My sword is smeared with ring-tailed sea snake poison. You can't withstand the sword's sharpness even if you have the black gas defense." Bernard sneered. He watched as Levi's palm started bleeding. This guy was dead, for sure. Even a knight's physique could not resist the ring-tailed sea snake poison. This poison was enough to put down a bull. Levi did not care. He was indeed angered. This time, he had to figure out who was trying to kill him behind his back. He grabbed the assassin's thin sword and exerted force. The assassin had to let go of his hands to avoid being stabbed. He cursed, "Crazy. You're crazy. You're overloaded with your breathing technique." He had used all his methods but was still not a match for the crazy person before him. Now that his weapon had been stolen, what was the point of fighting? Immediately, he thought of retreating. The assassination attempt had failed. If he failed, so be it. As long as he stayed alive, there was hope. Escape was the best strategy. He immediately rolled and dodged Levi's sword. Then, he stepped on the wall and climbed onto the roof. The assassin's movements were far too agile. Levi quickly approached an open area and watched from afar as the killer ran and jumped on the roofs. Levi rubbed an arrowhead on the thin sword he had snatched, drew his bow, and nocked an arrow. The assassin was about to jump into a dark alley and slip away. Levi accumulated his power. The arrow was like wind and thunder, whistling as it came. The assassin cried out in pain and rolled down from the roof. Chapter 49, Chapter 49, The Arrival of the White Wolf and Slaughter in the Night. Chapter 49, The Arrival of the White Wolf and Slaughter in the Night. Levi's hand, which the thin sword had cut, was already numb and itchy. He knew that the poison had started to take effect. He usually needed the corresponding antidote in his previous life, but he did not have such a thing now. He used his black gas to push the contaminated blood out of his body. Then, he washed the wound with clean water a few times. Fortunately, he used the black gas as a defense, so the damage was not significant, and the poison was not too much. The black snake breathing technique was indeed powerful. After forcing out most of the poison, the remaining did not have much effect on Levi. Soon, his palm regained its senses. The black snake seed in his heart was trembling, constantly consuming the energy in his body and transforming it into wisps of black gas to remove the remaining poison. After replenishing his food and bandaging his wounds, Levi left the place in the dark. If he was not mistaken, The assassin should have also been poisoned. Levi did not know if he had the antidote on him, but with his mid-level knight cultivation, that bit of poison was not enough to kill him. Levi's arrow did not hit the assassin's vital organs. As a mid-level knight, he was sensitive to danger. His superb combat awareness and muscle memory allowed him to dodge the fatal attack at a critical moment. However, Levi was sure that he was injured. Now was the best time to deal with him. Bernard pushed open the door of the lonely mansion with a stagger. He closed the door and locked it. An arrow shot him in the back, almost piercing his heart. Baron Levi is a master archer with such fine archery skills. The intelligence didn't mention this. Despite being so cautious, Bernard did not expect the failure of this assassination. Not only did it fail, he was also seriously injured. It was not that he was careless, but the enemy's strength was not what the intelligence reported. Fortunately, Levi was poisoned. It should be acting up now. He will probably die soon. Even if he doesn't die, he should have lost his ability to move. It probably won't be too late to kill him after I deal with the arrow in my back and bandage myself. Bernard endured the pain and pressed down on the tail feather of the arrow. The arrow had pierced from the other side, and the pain almost made him faint. The arrowhead could only be taken out like this. If he pulled it out, the barbs on the arrowhead would pull out his internal organs. Bernard cursed, D***mn, little brat, when I'm done bandaging, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. As a mid-level knight, beyond speed, his physique was not something ordinary people could compare to. He could recover slowly if he treated this injury in time and followed up with medicine and nutrition. All of a sudden, he sensed that something was wrong and flowed towards his heart. The leopard-like life seed above his heart started to tremble violently. Oh no, snake poison. Bernard was shocked and furious. He forced himself to calm down. Being agitated would only speed up his blood circulation and allow the poison to reach his heart faster. Even if it were just a tiny amount of poison, the consequences would be unimaginable once it entered the heart. Shadow Lord, please bless your most loyal believer, prayed Knight Bernard softly. A black gas emerged from the life seed, sending the poison away from his heart. Bernard was treading on thin ice and being extremely careful. This was completely different from when Levi had his palm cut. After an extended period, a stream of poisonous blood spurted from the wound, and Bernard's face turned pale. He began bandaging his bleeding wound and taking medicine to heal his injuries. As an assassin, he naturally carried some life-saving drugs with him. Knight Bernard muttered, "Phew, that was a blessing. The Shadow Lord still cares for me." Suddenly, the door fell with a bang. A burly figure covered in white smoke used his large hands to straighten the white wolf mask on his face and appeared before Bernard. D***mn. How is this possible? Bernard was shocked. What responded to him was Levi's short arrow. Bang, 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 bang. 4 straight arrows were shot like flowing water. Splat. Ah. Knight Bernard screamed in agony. Arrows hit both his arms and legs. His limbs were in great pain, and he could not support himself. He lay on the ground with his back facing the sky. His face was still filled with disbelief. The white wolf mask appeared above the knight. The eyes staring down at him were cold. Levi's frostmourne slashed down. Kika. Knight Bernard's limbs were chopped off, and blood flowed out. Only that made Levi feel at peace. You. What do you want? Kill me. Bernard did not faint. Instead, he endured the pain and shouted. Levi stepped on Bernard's lower bottom. Tell me who hired your people to kill me. If you want to die faster. Levi sneered, you don't want your penis crushed by me. Bernard shouted, You twisted thing. The next moment, a piece of meat detached from his body. Ah, you. Don't. Ah. I don't know. I don't know who wants to kill you. The organization's broker just handed me this mission. Our organization is highly secretive. Besides the broker, the assassins don't know who the employer is. Oh, right, the broker will come to me tomorrow morning, you can ask him then. I swear on the Shadow Lord that everything I said is true. I beg you, give me a quick death. Kill me. Bernard's heart was like dead ashes. He had already given up struggling. Without his limbs, he was no longer functional. Without his private organ, he was no longer a man. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he might as well die. Levi chopped off Bernard's head and dismembered him. He then piled the corpse pieces and threw them into the fireplace as firewood. He then began to rummage through the cabinets in the room. Soon after, Levi found a locked iron box in an underground secret room in the room. He used ripple force to cut open the chains. A flash of golden light entered his eyes, almost blinding him. The chest was filled with layers of golden coins. Seeing so many gold coins, Levi's eyes lit up, and his breathing quickened. I'm rich. Chapter 50, Chapter 50, Too Weak. Chapter 50, Too Weak. Levi did not expect his assassin to be loaded. He poured all the gold coins he had looted into a small bag. He estimated about 3,000 gold coins according to their weight. Is the assassin business so profitable? I might as well stop being a broken lord and become an assassin instead. Levi was slightly shocked. He did not know that Knight Bernard, a silver assassin, had completed many past assassination missions. As the mid-level knight with the highest success rate, a commission could give him dozens or even hundreds of gold coins. Even without the commission, he could still gain a lot of gold coins by stealing from his past targets and rummaging through their property. 3,000 gold coins were expected. Bernard was bent on redeeming his territory. After earning so much, besides some necessary expenses, he did not waste a single cent. It was not challenging for him to make money, just that the fastest ways were through illegal means. Making money would not be challenging if a person could disregard morality, law, and even his own life. It only depended on one's efforts. 3,000 gold coins weighed over 15 kilograms and were now all in Levi's hands. Ordinary people would struggle to carry such a heavy chest, but not Levi, due to his incredible strength. Levi searched the assassin's house again, hoping to find his breathing technique inheritance diagram. Until now, this assassin's speed was the fastest among all the enemies Levi had encountered. If it wasn't for the assassin's lack of understanding about Levi, with his strength as a mid-level knight, Levi might have already died. However, to Levi's disappointment, he did not find the inheritance diagram and could only give up. It was late at night. The cold wind was chilly, and the night crows were cawing. Levi held Frostmourne with one hand and sat at the long table in the assassin's house. He ate the rations he had brought while waiting silently. He had recovered from his previous shocks and returned to his peak state. The minor injuries he had suffered previously did not affect him at all. He was happy that his family's ancestral breathing technique was defensive. When encountering such a sudden attack, the defense was the key. As time passed, Levi remained wide awake. Before dawn the next day, light footsteps sounded on the streets outside the gate. Levi's eyes twitched, and his muscles tensed. He was like a leopard ready to attack. A hesitant figure walked into Bernard's mansion. He looked at the broken door and the bloodstains in the courtyard, full of confusion. It was the broker who was in charge of contacting Bernard. What happened to Bernard? Did his house get robbed when he went on a mission last night? The black-robed figure had yet to react to the situation. A figure as imposing as a demon god had already blocked the door. He wore a white wolf mask, and the sword in his hand was covered in blood. He said in a cold voice, "You're finally here. It's your turn to die." The broker reacted and exclaimed, "You? Are you Levi?" You didn't die? Where's Bernard? You killed Bernard. However, what greeted him was a cross-shaped sword light that cut through the darkness and brought light. The sword filled with ripple force was aimed straight at the broker. Brokers provided intermediary services to the Bird of Death's voice. They were also members of the organization but were not in charge of assassinations, so they were not very good at combat. But even so, this broker was an official knight. He pulled out his sword and swung it at Levi. Just one strike. Under the ripple force's effect, the broker's sword flew out of his hand. The ripple force engulfed his entire body, and it was intolerable to him. He did not have Knight Bernard's strength, even Knight Bernard had met with misfortune. He knew that he was no match for Baron Levi. Flee. He had to flee. Baron Levi's strength was too terrifying. He had to tell the organization about this. There was no need to waste the lives of the organization's members on him. Unless the major client paid more money and invited the rare gold assassins or even the 5 shadows to take action personally, the silver and bronze assassins would only be sending themselves to death. He must have also killed the fantasy goblin knight. However, how could Levi let his only lead escape? He jumped like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. The explosive speed brought by his level 4 frost wolf breathing technique was not to be underestimated. Although he was not as fast as the assassin, his rate was more than enough for the broker. Levi grabbed the broker's shoulder with one hand and pressed down hard. Levi's heavy blow pressed down on the broker, and his head struck the ground. He spat out blood, head oozing blood. They were official knights, but Levi was significantly more powerful. Too weak. Too weak. Levi roared in rage as his sword pierced through the shoulder blade of the broker, nailing him to the ground. Now, tell me, who sent you to assassinate me? Levi narrowed his eyes and gave off a dangerous aura. I'm sorry, I can't comment. This broker was quite stubborn. Even in this situation, he still refused to speak. He was a death warrior trained by the organization. He was loyal and passionately believed in the Shadow Lord. Only such a person could take on the critical role of a broker. Levi slowly slid Frostmourne across his chest, causing his internal organs and flesh to dangle out of his body, blood flowing. The broker's face was pale as he used his last breath to say, "Kill me. The Shadow Lord will resuscitate me, and I will make a comeback. I will become the cursed shadow that will never dissipate." Ha! He waved Frostmourne and sliced the broker in half. "Keep silent if you wish. You have so much nonsense." Then, he searched through the broker's body, hoping to find some valuable clues. In the end, as he expected, he found nothing. "Ha, you're not going to say anything? If you have the guts, come and send more people. Come on. Sooner or later, I will catch you." Levi's eyes were bloodshot as he slashed his sword. After countless slashes, the broker turned into minced meat, which was thrown into the fireplace. Sizzling sounds were heard. Surrounded by the smell of roasted meat, Levi needed to go outside. He took a deep breath of the cold and fresh air outdoors and ate some dry rations to calm himself and regain his rationality. By the time he fully recovered, the sky had already turned white. The first ray of dawn shone on Levi's face, covered in blood and sweat. He washed himself in the bathroom and looked silently at himself in the bronze mirror. Then, he confirmed that there was nothing valuable in this mansion. He took out the pine trees that Bernard had stored for heating and piled them all up in the mansion. He then spared a fire using flames from the fireplace. The raging fire devoured everything, and his figure disappeared from the mansion where the murder had happened. Chapter 51, Chapter 51, Gold Belt for Murder and Arson. Chapter 51, Gold Belt for Murder and Arson. Despite his misdeeds, Levi could not help but feel a sense of pride for his discovery. The surprise of 3,000 gold coins made him feel a little smug. A standard gold coin weighed about 6 grams. He carried dozens of kilograms of gold coins on his back. He did not dare to walk too shakily, afraid that others would know he had a bag of gold coins. He pitted himself in his heart. If only he had a storage ring. Although I have a lot of money, I still have to gather ambergris. However, it's not safe to carry so much money with me. I must find a place to hide and return to it after I finish my business here. Levi executed his plan immediately. He left the Icewind city, and after making sure that no one was following him, he ran towards the wilderness. After confirming a direction and walking a long distance, he reached a ridge covered in a dense conifer forest. He found a big tree that he could remember and began digging. Once he correctly buried the gold coins and covered the area with some rocks, Levi patted the soil on the body and eliminated any traces of artificial excavation. Finally, he turned around and left. He stood atop a big tree in the distance and quietly waited for an hour. No one appeared. Only then did he feel relieved and run down the mountain. It was almost time for the gathering with Graf. Only when Levi heard from a passerby that night Bernard's house was on fire did he know the assassin's name. Bernard's house was very remote, and no one was there when the incident happened. In addition, there were no traces of the fire. With the low forensic level in this era, the possibility of finding the dirty traitor was not high. So he was not too concerned. Near the western city gate of Icewind City, a carriage with goods slowly set off in the morning. Around the carriage were 5 knights of different figures. Some rode horses, while others walked. It was Levi's group. He had already met up with Graf and the others. After sufficient preparations, they headed for the earthly dragon beast's territory that Graf had mentioned. Everyone, before we begin this operation, let me emphasize our division of labor again. I'll be in charge of finding the earthly dragon beast. The Green Falcon Knight will use his speed advantage to lure the beast into the shooting range. The Black Rhino Knight will cooperate with the Green Falcon Knight and use his shield and defensive advantage to restrain the earthly dragon beast. As for the Red Spider Knight, you'll apply the poison you've prepared to the arrowheads and ensure His Excellency White Wolf can shoot without distractions. No problem, said the Green Falcon Knight. I hope nothing goes wrong. The Black Rhino Knight looked around and finally fixed his gaze on Levi. He believed he was the strongest among the 5 and would play the most crucial role. He was deeply suspicious of the White Wolf, who had joined the group last, and his archery skills. All right, that territory is at the border between the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire. Besides being careful of the earthly dragon beast, we must also be careful of the Tuva Empire. I'm worried that the Tuva Empire will also find traces of the earthly dragon beast and send people to investigate. After all, it is still unclear if the seriously injured Grand Knight, who dealt with the earthly dragon beast, is dead. Graf was also concerned about forming the team at such a last minute and repeatedly mentioned the things to note. Levi was constantly on guard as he walked, looking for signs of the Bird of Death's voice's appearance. After 2 assassinations, Levi was now even more cautious. For this trip, he had spent considerable money to buy a new high-quality chainmail in the city. He would wear it if it were not for the inconvenience of wearing plate armor for long-distance marching. Apart from that, his quiver was also filled with arrows. He had the Black Snake dagger in his left hand and Frostmourne in his right. He also had quicklime looted from the assassin in his pocket. He was ready to throw it at the enemy in the eye at any time. In short, he was fully armed. After traveling for 3 nights, Levi and his team finally arrived at the earthly dragon beast's territory that Graf had mentioned. This was a vast valley. In the middle of the valley was a dense forest. In the distance, there were towering snow mountains that stretched endlessly. That was the dividing line between the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire. After crossing the mountains, there was a vast, boundless seaside hill and plains. There, the Tuva people lived. Unlike the Emerald Kingdom, the Tuva Empire was a feudal empire with a central power, so its overall strength was much more potent than the Emerald Kingdom. Before the Millennium Holy War, the Tuva Empire often invaded the Emerald Kingdom. The Emerald Kingdom declared war during the Millennium Holy War and recruited many noble coalition forces. The Holy War ended with the Tuva Empire withdrawing its troops, but the Emerald Kingdom suffered heavy losses. The primary habitat of the earthly dragon beast was the Tuva Empire. The earthly dragon beast Graf would likely have migrated from there. Because the road was getting harder to walk, the carriage was already having difficulty moving forward. Graf and the Black Rhino Knight directly carried the armor-breaking crossbow and walked. Finally, they placed the armor-breaking crossbow on a stable high ground. Standing on the high ground, they had a good view of the valley. The earthly dragon beast's territory that I've marked is ahead. Next, Red Spider Knight and Your Excellency White Wolf will make preparations here. We'll lure the earthly dragon beast over. Your Excellency White Wolf. Remember, the earthly dragon beast's weak points are only its eyes and the area behind its eyes. That is its brain. Besides that, even if we penetrate the earthly dragon beast's other areas, it will be difficult to kill it quickly due to its huge size. Moreover, it is unrealistic to instantly kill the earthly dragon beast with the poison that Lady Red Spider has concocted. Therefore, please do your best. Otherwise, we may not leave his territory alive even with the earthly dragon beast injured. Graf's expression was solemn. Without a doubt, the key to this battle was Levi's accuracy. They might lose if Levi made any mistakes. Failure was secondary, the most terrifying thing was losing their lives. That was why he had to emphasize it again and again. He wanted to tell Levi that if their team were to fail, Levi would be killed by the enraged earthly dragon beast. Just do your job well. I won't have any problems here, said Levi calmly and confidently. I hope so. The Black Rhino Knight stared at Levi and turned to leave. The Green Falcon Knight and Graf immediately followed. The Red Spider Knight took out a small bottle of medicine that emitted a strange fragrance from the inner lining of her impenetrable armor and opened her red lips slightly. This is the strongest poison refined from 6 types of precious and highly toxic substances. There is only chance. Your Excellency White Wolf, you must shoot accurately. The Red Spider Knight said with a smile, smearing the precious liquid on the arrowheads. If the poison were dipped too early, it would quickly evaporate, reducing efficacy. Believe me, with a beautiful lady like you by my side, I will shoot more accurately than you think, said Levi calmly as he observed his surroundings. Chapter 52, The King of Beasts. Chapter 52, The King of Beasts. The Red Spider Knight chuckled. Levi was relaxed and was ready to shoot at any moment. After the poison was applied, the two quietly hid beside the armor-breaking crossbow. The bushes next to them covered their figures. Levi could hear the Red Spider Knight's heartbeat. She seemed a little nervous and not as indifferent as she looked. At the same time, a roar that sounded like a tyrannosaurus echoed throughout the valley. Levi and the Red Spider Knight immediately became alert. In the dense forest in the distance, the trees were quivering. Countless birds were frightened, and all kinds of wild beasts, whether docile herbivores or fierce carnivores, fled wildly after this roar. As the booming voice resounded, all the living beings on the earth began to tremble in fear. Even Levi, who was an official knight, felt a little uneasy. This was the might of an earthly dragon beast. The king of all beasts on this continent. Graf and his teammates were running for their lives in the dense forest. Behind them, an angry giant beast charged forward, knocking away the trees and boulders. It was a giant-scaled beast that was comparable to a tyrannosaurus. It had a height of over 3 meters and a length of over 10 meters. Its entire body was covered with scales similar to a crocodile's. Every muscle movement caused the scales on its body to emit a metallic sound. Its 4 limbs were thick and powerful, just like the Sumerian rhinoceros. It was covered in layers of wrinkled skin, just like a knight's heavy armor. The Green Falcon Knight had already given up on his horse because he realized that even though the earthly dragon beast did not run fast, its short-term explosive speed was not something his inferior horse could compare to. Fortunately, he cultivated the Azure Falcon's shallow breathing technique. The Green Falcon was a legendary divine bird that soared in the sky. With a flap of its wings, it could travel hundreds of miles. The Green Falcon Knight was now like a diving gerfalcon. He swept his arms backward in a running posture similar to Naruto. The earthly dragon beast's short-distance explosive speed was not as fast as his. The furious earthly dragon beast noticed this and charged at Groff, who was running slower. Groff roared, "Black Rhino Knight, go!" The Black Rhino Knight, sprinting away, turned his head. He gulped and looked at the hill-like earthly dragon beast. Even though he cultivated the giant rhinoceros breathing technique, which was powerful, and had plate armor and a giant shield, when he stood before this enormous beast, he instinctively began to fear. Only then did he realize that the legends of the bards were too conservative in describing the power of the earthly dragon beasts. By the Heavenly Father, even a grand knight would find it hard to fight this thing head-on, right? With every increase in weight, its strength increased exponentially. Black Rhino. Quick, lure this D***net guy away. The effective range of the armor-breaking crossbow was only 400 meters. The closer, the better. Groff quickly climbed up a tree as thick as a bucket, trying to dodge the earthly dragon beast's attack. The next moment, the earthly dragon beast crashed into the tree, and the tree fell. Groff jumped onto another tree as he fell. The Black Rhino Knight gritted his teeth and charged forward like a bull, stabbing his great sword straight into the earthly dragon beast's butt. The sound of metal clashing. The Black Rhino Knight's great sword seemed to have pierced through plate armor. It was impossible to break through its defense. Don't waste your effort. Besides the specially made armor-breaking crossbow, only a Grand Knight with a black gas weapon can break through the earthly dragon beast's defense, said Groff. Black gas entwined was a technique that only Grand Knights could master. The next moment, the earthly dragon beast turned around. A hideous wound was on its side like a spear had pierced it. The damage was profound, reaching straight into the bone marrow. However, it seemed to have begun to heal, and dense flesh had grown all over the wound. The Black Rhino Knight roared, "Green Falcon Knight, come and help me." Boom! The earthly dragon beast leaped and chased after him. The Green Falcon Knight turned around and saw the earthly dragon beast chasing after the Black Rhino Knight. His entire body was like a flash of green light. He threw a spear at the earthly dragon beast ruthlessly. The spear naturally did not break through the defense and fell to the ground. The earthly dragon beast was also confused by the three knights. Although these three knights were weak, they stung non-stop like flies. In addition, it had fought with a human powerhouse some time ago. Although the human powerhouse had been severely injured by it and escaped, the beast had also suffered considerable injuries. It still managed to catch up to the slowest Black Rhino Knight. Then, it opened its mouth and bit at him. The Black Rhino Knight used his long shield to block to attack, but the shield was also the victim of the attack. Along with the sound of metal being squeezed, the shield deformed. The earthly dragon beast's bite force was apparent. The Black Rhino Knight even brandished his great sword, wanting to escape, but it was futile. His shield fell to the ground amid the battle. At this moment, his face was filled with despair. With a cracking sound, he was cut in half at the waist. The plate armor did not have much of an effect. The joint of the plate armor directly popped open. The Black Rhino Knight's flesh and blood were dismembered. In the end, his legs fell to the ground. He howled in pain until he was bitten into fragments by the earthly dragon beast and thrown away. Humans were not tasty, so the beast vomited the remains. Seeing his powerful teammate killed in a split second, Groff's heart sank. The earthly dragon beast continued to charge at the green falcon knight, who was scared out of his wits. He used all his strength, almost exhausting his life seed, to inject black gas into his legs. His entire body was like a steam locomotive as he ran toward Levi. Levi looked calm on the surface but was a little panicked. "Your Excellency White Wolf, it's up to you." The Red Spider Knight did not dare to stay any longer. She felt an imminent sense of danger and believed something terrible would happen. Her figure flashed and left the high ground. Levi glanced at Red Spider, who was running away, and his eyes flickered with killing intent. A bunch of pigs. How unreliable. 3,000 meters. 1 kilometer. 400 meters. Although they were within range, Levi did not shoot to prevent insufficient damage. The Green Falcon Knight shouted, "Hurry and shoot. I can't do it anymore." 300 meters. 200 meters. Like a deflated balloon, the Green Falcon Knight's speed instantly slowed. He had run too much and could no longer hold on. At this moment, the earthly dragon beast had already caught up. Just as its huge abyssal mouth was about to bite the Green Falcon Knight. Whoosh! A sharp air-piercing sound was heard. Following the sound was a specially made, 2 meters long crossbow bolt. The crossbow bolt pierced through the scales on the earthly dragon beast's head, aiming for its vital parts. One end of the arrow pierced through the earthly dragon beast. It roared in pain. It did not notice that there were still people behind the bushes on the high ground. It flew into a rage and used its last breath to stomp on the frightened Green Falcon Knight. Then, it charged toward Levi on the high ground. It's still not dead. Chapter 53, Chapter 53, Justice descends from the heavens. Chapter 53, Justice descends from the heavens. Levi did not run away immediately. After firing the first arrow, he immediately fired the second. The Red Spider Knight was hidden behind a massive rock in the distance. She withheld her breath as she heard the earthly dragon beast's roar approaching. Judging from earlier screams, the Green Falcon Knight had likely died, like Black Rhino Knight. She was still young. She was only 27 years old. With her rare identity and beauty as a female knight, she might be favored by earls or heirs and become a mighty countess. On the hand, Levi's second arrow had already been shot. Blinded by blood, the earthly dragon beast stomped on the rocks and dust as it charged toward Levi. The arrow did not hit the earthly dragon beast's vitals. Instead, it shot toward the earthly dragon beast's front leg. Levi finally realized that Groff was a fraud. There was no way of reaching its vitals with one strike. He might as well shoot at the earthly dragon beast's limbs first and cripple it. As expected, the armor-breaking crossbow shot into the earthly dragon beast's joints and broke its bones. After a crack, the earthly dragon beast lost its balance and fell forward, Rollins. Levi looked at the last armor-breaking crossbow. He shot it at the earthly dragon beast's hind leg this time. Another thunderous explosion. The earthly dragon beast's scream was heart-wrenching. "I'm breaking your front and hind legs. How are you going to run?" As Levi said harshly, he retreated far away and watched quietly. After some thought, he took out his arrow. It shot toward the earthly dragon beast's eyes. Finally, the poison that the Red Spider Knight had concocted began to take effect. The poison that was said to be able to kill hundreds of people with a single drop was indeed extraordinary. The earthly dragon beast's body, more substantial than a Grand Knight's, began to tremble. Not long after, the earthly dragon beast became weaker. Groff did not care about the corpses of his two fallen companions. He grabbed the Black Rhino Knight's greatsword and stabbed it into the earthly dragon beast's eye. He stirred it vigorously to ensure that the earthly dragon beast was dead. Then, he sat on the ground, panting. He was ecstatic in his heart. He had successfully killed an earthly dragon beast. Besides the precious ambergris, the scales, skin, and even the earthly dragon beast bones could be sold at high prices. The meat of the earthly dragon beast could have been sold for a lot of money, but Groff was not sure if anyone would buy the poisoned meat. Groff had previously calculated that the entire body of an adult earthly dragon beast, including the ambergris, was worth more than 5,000 gold coins. It was a massive sum of money. With this massive sum, he could buy a good baron's land and become a noble. Or rather, he could go to the church, buy a normal official position, and become a noble clergy. From then on, he would no longer need to be a bounty hunter or a smuggler. He could enjoy his life. It was all worth it after planning for so long. As for the death of his two companions, Groff merely felt a tiny bit of disdain. It would be better if they died. That way, he could give them less ambergris. The earthly dragon beast was dead, and it was time to distribute it. Only then did the red spider knight walk over leisurely. Levi also walked around with a calm expression. "Your Excellency White Wolf, thanks to you, we succeeded. I, Groff, have never seen a master archer like you," said Groff with a smile. "Cut the crap. According to our previous agreement, let's start collecting the ambergris," responded Levi. Groff quickly nodded. "No problem, I'll do it." Then, he took out some special small bottles and removed the glands from the earthly dragon beast's mouth. Although the earthly dragon beast was huge, the ambergris producing gland was only the size of a coconut. It was unknown how much ambergris was inside. A unique fragrance filled the air. Soon, Groff took out all the ambergris. There were 13 bottles, which was much less than he had expected. This displeased Groff, whose back faced Levi and the red spider knight. He could not help but sigh in his heart. If there were more than 15 bottles, Groff would not mind giving Levi 2 bottles. However, there were only 13 bottles now. He hesitated for a moment before finally making a decision. When he turned around, the short sword in his hand that was used to extract the ambergris gland stabbed toward Levi's neck. He shouted, "Red Spider! Do it!" The red spider knight seemed to have also been prepared for this, stabbing a poisoned dagger at Levi from behind. She had prepared only one portion of that secret poison but 2 vials. A poison strong enough to poison an earthly dragon beast would be lethal to Levi. Levi thought it was reasonable for Groff and the red spider knight to betray him despite immense benefits. He had already seen through it. From the conversation between Groff, Red Spider, and the others, he could tell they had known each other for a long time. Their relationship was not ordinary, so how could he, an outsider, not be on guard? Especially at a time like this when they were distributing benefits. Therefore, Levi had already prepared himself for a sudden attack. When shooting at the earthly dragon beast, he was confident that he could hit the earthly dragon beast from 300 to 400 meters away. Why had he waited for 200 meters before firing? The goal was for the earthly dragon beast to finish off Green Falcon Knight. After all, among the 4 of them, only the Green Falcon Knight's speed could suppress Levi's Frost Wolf breathing technique, which was at the peak of level 4. He could easily endanger Levi. Only Groff and the Red Spider Knight were left after dealing with the Green Falcon Knight and with the Black Rhino. Knight already shredded to pieces. Even if they were to betray him suddenly, Levi was confident he could kill them both. He executed Frost Wolf breathing technique to his best potential. Boom! Levi's body burst forth with terrifying power. He jumped almost as high as a person and dodged the Red Spider Knight's stab. He even threw a handful of quicklime at her. This caught the Red Spider Knight off guard and made her narrow her eyes. Levi pulled out Frostmourne and slashed at her in a split second. Take this. Golden Cross Slash. Ripple Force. The Red Spider Knight did not expect Levi's breathing technique to reach such a high level. Furthermore, she thought Levi used a strength-type breathing technique when she saw his burly physique. She did not expect him to be so fast, second only to the Green Falcon Knight. He had obviously cultivated a speed-type breathing technique, which was far above hers. She used her dagger to block Levi's attack, but the golden cross slash broke her blade. Her beautiful face turned pale. In the next moment, the sword light of the cross cut directly split her into four. The attacks from Groff were caught by Levi's bare hands, filled with black gas. He looked at Groff, revealing his silver teeth and a mocking expression. Levi grabbed Groff's short sword and kicked the shocked Groff, sending him flying. Who was he? How many breathing techniques did he cultivate? How could he hold my sword with his bare hands? The moment he fell to the ground, countless questions flashed through his mind. Enduring the pain, he stood up shakily and tried to escape with the ambergris. Bang, bang, bang. The arrows were like thunderclaps. Groff turned around to say something, but he could not. His neck was pierced. He fell to the ground and died with an unwilling expression. If he had known that Levi was so influential in close combat, he might not have given up his life for those few bottles of ambergris. However, there were no ifs in this world. Fear makes you forget the most important thing. When facing a master archer, never try to run away with your back facing him. Levi walked up to Groff and cut off his head. Chapter 54, Chapter 54, The Man-Faced Spider Breathing Technique. Chapter 54, The Man-Faced Spider Breathing Technique. Many people had the mentality of being lucky and greedy. Levi's contribution to this operation was worth 2 bottles of ambergris. Even if Groff gave Levi 2 bottles of ambergris, he still had many bottles left for himself. However, he became greedy. He deserved to be punished. Fortunately, I have long been wary of your small team and am strong enough. Ever since becoming an official knight, he discovered his strength was far more potent than imagined after his past battles. Besides the previous sneak attack by the mid-level knight assassin, he had fought against other knights without getting hurt. His opponents had all been official knights, but the difference was too significant. Hence, Levi did not dare to be arrogant and complacent. Instead, he learned that there would always be someone better than him. Levi, out of danger, began cleaning up the battlefield. First, there were 13 bottles of ambergris. Levi calculated that with his current dosage as an official knight, 1 bottle of ambergris was enough for him to use the secret medicine for a month. Hence, he would not be lacking ambergris for an entire year. Before the end of this year, he should be able to step into the realm of mid-level knight and cultivate the black snake breathing technique to the 5th level. At that time, the special effect would be upgraded again, and his strength would rise to another level. After putting away the ambergris, Levi began to rummage through Groff's body. This person seemed to have platforms to obtain ambergris. Levi guessed that Groff might be a smuggler of ambergris between the Tuva Empire and the Emerald Kingdom. In the end, he found nothing besides finding over 100 gold coins. D*MN, what a broke man. That said, no one would carry much money with them under normal circumstances. That would be too inconvenient. Levi went to the Red Spider Knight, who had been dismembered. He was very curious about the Red Spider Knight's poison refining technique, so he wanted to see if any secret manuals could give him some experience. Unexpectedly, he found it. What a woman! She keeps all the good stuff under her breasts, Levi said, looking at the pile of bottles and jars stained with blood. These were the ingredients used to make poison. Other than that, there were dozens of gold coins and a piece of parchment. On the parchment was a breathing technique inheritance diagram. This breathing technique was called the man-faced spider breathing technique. There were tiny people with different postures and movements surrounding a strange-looking red spider that was as big as a house and had 8 human faces. This should be the man-faced spider, a terrifying and strange existence in the legends. Levi stared at it. This breathing technique was a little strange. It did not focus on the usual attributes that Levi was familiar with, such as strength, physique, defense, and speed. Instead, it focused on a very magical aspect, perception. The concept of perception was highly mysterious. One could sense the subtle vibrations of gases, liquids, and solid objects coming from all directions through the hairs and skin on one's body. Any movement within the range of perception could be sensed without needing vision and hearing through perception. In short, this was a necessary skill for blind people. But this breathing technique was the weakest among all the basic breathing techniques. That was why the Red Spider Knight was so weak. In Levi's opinion, this was a purely supplementary breathing technique. It was an extremely specialized breathing technique to enhance a combat breathing technique. Otherwise, it would be useless, no matter how strong one's perception was. Interesting. It'll be worth practicing. Then, Levi put away the breathing technique inheritance diagram. The man-face spider breathing technique also had a secret medicine that was slightly special. It was not used to assist cultivation but to poison. That was why the Red Spider Knight had mastered many tricky and dangerous poison formulas. Then, Levi went to the Green Falcon Knight and Black Rhino Knight corpses. Unfortunately, there were no breathing technique inheritance diagrams, only a few gold coins. Originally, Levi wanted the breathing technique that the Green Falcon Knight cultivated, but now it seemed that he could only give up. Under normal circumstances, people would not carry the breathing technique inheritance diagram with them. The Red Spider Knight had to take it with her because the poison formulas she needed were all on the inheritance diagram. Nonetheless, the Black Rhino Knight's armor, shield, and greatsword were not bad, so Levi took them without hesitation. After looting, Levi humanely cremated them to prevent them from being preyed on by wild beasts. Finally, Levi set his eyes on the hill-like corpse of the earthly dragon beast. He was most worried about how to bring back this corpse worth at least 1,000 gold coins. The earthly dragon beast was more significant than any existing terrestrial mammalia Levi had seen in his previous life. It would be difficult for him to bring such a big fellow back to his territory. However, he would never leave the earthly dragon beast's corpse here. That was simply a waste of a treasure. The earthly dragon beast was a treasure, and Levi had already considered its use. Since Levi was not in a hurry to return to his territory, he began dealing with it after managing the 4 corpses. The scales on the earthly dragon beast's body were tough. Levi spent a lot of effort prying the scales of the giant dead beast and cutting its stomach open. He took off the scales of the earthly dragon beast one by one and piled them together. Besides ambergris, this should be the most precious part of the earthly dragon beast's body. After polishing these scales, they could be used to make armor. Although their hardness might be inferior to iron armor of the same thickness, they were light and could be made into high-quality scale armor. Levi wanted to use the most rigid scales on the earthly dragon beast's back to forge a set of armor for himself, and the rest would be for Sir Fred and the 3 brothers. However, the 3 brothers were still growing, and their bodies changed yearly. Therefore, Levi could only wait until they were fully developed before he forged their armor. By then, Levi would have 3 fully armored war bears with the strength of a high-level knight. They would be invincible in battles. Levi patiently dealt with the earthly dragon beast's corpse in the wilderness. The bloody smell of the corpse attracted some wild beasts, but they were all killed by Levi and consumed as food. Just like that, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It took Levi 3 days to pry off all the scales. The Black Rhino Knight's great sword that he used was somewhat deformed. However, looking at the massive pile of scales on the ground, Levi was satisfied. Although the flesh of the earthly dragon beast had not decayed after such a long time, it had been contaminated by the Red Spider Knight's poison. Levi could painfully let them go to waste. Otherwise, he would have liked to taste the meat of the earthly dragon beast. It was worth mentioning that Levi also found dozens of gold coins in the stomach of the earthly dragon beast. This reminded him of the legend that the earthly dragon beast liked to collect shiny things. He immediately looked at the earthly dragon beast's nest in the distant forest. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. Besides a few corpses, there was nothing inside. In the end, he could only leave resentfully. After returning to the territory, Levi washed the earthly dragon beast's skin and dried it to make bags. He then filled the bags with scales and found the carriage they had abandoned earlier, filling it up with scales and the dismantled armor-breaking crossbow. He headed in the direction they came from. The armor-breaking crossbow was mighty, and Levi wanted to find time to replicate it when he returned. This time, he did not return to the Icewind City. He went to retrieve the gold coins he had buried. After that, he took a long detour. After half a month, he finally arrived at the Blackwater Valley. Chapter 55, Chapter 55, Levi, the Crazy Outlaw. Chapter 55, Levi, the Crazy Outlaw. On the way home, Levi kept thinking. Why did an assassin target him the moment he left Blackwater Valley? Why was he recognized even though he wore a mask after entering the city? He was also targeted when Sir Fred left the territory. These two things could not be coincidences. There was only one possibility. There was a mole in the Blackwater Valley. A mole had been telling the Bird of Death's voice or others who wanted to kill him. Levi was gloomy. The Blackwater Valley was small, so finding the mole was not complex. He already had a plan in mind. After returning to the Blackwater Valley, Levi first hid all the gold coins in the small vault of his shelter. Other than keeping some daily expenses to maintain the castle, he had already thought about how to spend the rest. Seeing Levi's safe arrival, Sir Fred was relieved. "Young master, you've been gone for a month, and I've been worried sick," Sir Fred said. "Fred, I've gained quite a lot from this trip. I'm going to practice my breathing technique now. I have a problem, so I'll have to trouble you to help me deal with it in the next few days," responded Levi. In the year 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the month of green grass, there was a rumor that the star of the Jade royal family, the legendary Knight of the Emerald Kingdom, and the so-called first person under the legendary Knight, the White Horse Knight, had failed to break through to the legendary Knight realm. It was unknown whether this news was accurate or not. Afterward, the Rovalfamilv claimed this was a rumor, and the White Horse Knight was still on the road to the legendary realm. The final result was not released. If the White Horse Knight could become a legendary knight, he might be the first legend born after the millennium. Jade royal family's status would also rise. A legendary knight was enough to intimidate many ambitious nobles and underground forces. In Icewind City, the church's investigation of the fire that had occurred more than a month ago concluded. Someone likely had murdered Knight Bernard and set his mansion on fire. The church had found his remains in the ashes of the fireplace in his estate. The church expressed its severe condemnation of such murder and arson. For a while, everyone in the city panicked. Knight Bernard was humorous and thrifty, but he died at the hands of a nameless madman. Where was the perpetrator's conscience? Moreover, Knight Bernard was a real knight, a mid-level knight at that. Even he was not a match for this madman. In the entire Icewind City, besides the Earl of Silver Mountain and a few high-level and peak knights, who could guarantee they could survive in front of this madman? The Earl of Silver Mountain was furious. He thought that this was a provocation from the thugs. He mobilized his Silver Hunter Guards and began to patrol the Icewind City daily, swearing to fight against the dark forces to the end. Meanwhile, in Blackwater Valley, the culprit behind the murder of Knight Bernard, Baron Levi, was concocting a secret potion in the shelter. After some time, he had finally converted the 13 bottles of ambergris into a secret medicine. He would consume it while gaining experience. In the shelter, Levi muttered, "The soldiers disguised as me have already left the Blackwater Valley. We'll see who will take the bait." After returning to Black Snake Castle, Levi rarely showed his face in public. He had a feeling that there was a mole in the castle. Therefore, he wanted to experiment tonight. During the day, he asked a soldier the closest to him in size and appearance to pretend to be him, wear his clothes, and ride his horse out of the Blackwater Valley. He had released news that he would visit a friend in the Icewind City. The Blackwater Valley was only this big. If there were a mole, he would sneak out of the Blackwater Valley to tip off the news when no one was paying attention. After all, mobile phones did not exist in this world, so one must tip off verbally. Levi wanted to see who would leave the valley tonight. Levi did not know if this method would work, so he could only try it. If it did not work, he would think of other ways. In the shelter, Levi cultivated while waiting for news. His breathing technique cultivation had been delayed because he had been out for a month. However, now that he had the secret medicine, he could catch up very quickly. After he took the secret medicine and cultivated the black snake breathing technique once, he was shocked. The proficiency of the black snake breathing technique increased by 20 points. As his realm increased, his breathing technique cultivation efficiency also increased dramatically, along with Levi's appetite. Unlike Sir Fred, Levi's breathing technique was in a period of rapid improvement. After all, Sir Fred was old and had already begun to age. His vitality started falling, and his need for food was much smaller. Levi was different. He was in the growing phase, and his vitality inflated. After Levi advanced to an official knight, his digestion and food consumption were several times higher than a quasi-knight. Even though he ate more than a quasi-knight, he only went to the toilet once or twice daily. His life seeds efficiently absorbed most of the substances and nutrients in the food, which catalyzed the black gas and strengthened his physical fitness. Although Levi had yet to advance into a mid-level knight, he could feel his proficiency and the volume of black gas in his body increasing. This was a process of constant quantitative change, and the key to qualitative change was the node of each realm. After cultivating the black snake breathing technique, Levi began developing the siren breathing technique. There were no secret medicines required for this breathing technique. It had only been a few months since Levi started practicing the siren breathing technique, and it was already at the second level, the proficiency bar more than half complete. Levi estimated that he would be able to reach the next level next month. The more he cultivated the breathing techniques, the more Levi felt that despite their merits, whether speed or strength, they were about the same. Sometimes, Levi thought all breathing techniques might have originated from the same root. All in all, Levi estimated that based on this trend, the higher his realm in the future, the more powerful breathing techniques he would master, and the faster he would be able to cultivate a breathing technique to its limit. He might even fully develop a breathing technique within a month. Not long after he finished cultivating the siren breathing technique, he vaguely heard the roars of the three brothers in the castle. Levi's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that Sir Fred and the others had made a move. He stood up and left. On a small path outside the castle, the three brothers surrounded a person, baring their teeth and glaring at the person. Not long after, Levi and Sir Fred rushed over. The soldier was surrounded and looked flustered. "My lord? You're back." Chapter 56, Chapter 56, Pale Shadow and Iron Mountain. Chapter 56, Pale Shadow and Iron Mountain. Levi had one principle: rather get 1,000 killed than get one missed. He tortured the soldier who had sneakily escaped in the middle of the night. This soldier was indeed a spy. He was a spy that the Bird of Death's voice had bribed to facilitate the assassination. It had been a while since he had snuck into Blackwater Valley. When Sir Fred left the castle, he was the one who reported to the broker of the Bird of Death's voice. Then, the assassin took advantage of Sir Fred's departure to sneak into Levi's castle at night and assassinate him. Of course, this spy did not tell the broker that Levi had already become a Imite. This was a fatal mistake on his part that caused the failure of the assassination. However, this spy did not know who ordered his assassination. The Bird of Death's voice was a professional team, after all. They did an excellent job of keeping their customers' secrets. However, given that the client hired so many assassins, even a mid-level Imite, he must be an influential figure, just like Levi and Sir Fred had guessed. Duke of Montenegro. Levi narrowed his eyes with killing intent, thinking of a countermeasure. The fact that the Duke of Montenegro would hire assassins twice meant he would not give up until he achieved his goal. With the Duke of Montenegro's strength and status, Levi could imagine how difficult his future would be. The Duke of Montenegro even bent the law to get him killed. Levi did not know what else the Duke of Montenegro would do. There were only two things Levi could do now. One was to give up his territory and identity as a lord and wander the world to avoid the Duke of Montenegro's pursuit. The second was to continue being the Lord of Blackwater Valley, but he would face unimaginable danger. Ultimately, Levi decided to take it one step at a time. Both plans had pros and cons, and it was not easy to settle for now. He would soon be able to advance into A, and now that he had a lot of gold coins, he could start expanding the territory's military strength. With his current strength, unless the Duke of Montenegro came personally, he would have no problem escaping. In the end, Levi killed the spy. "You're still not careful enough. You have to be stricter with the review of the soldiers in the future, Fred," said Levi to Fred. "I'm sorry, young master. This is my dereliction of duty. This kind of thing will not happen again." Fred felt extraordinarily guilty and uncomfortable. As young Master Levi's knight, he had failed in his duty to protect the master. He had let down his master. "It's fine. I need some time. It won't take too long. I'll make these people who want me dead regret it." "Right, Fred, don't forget to help me check out the giant breathing technique and the melon family." Levi returned to the shelter and continued practicing his breathing technique. It would not affect his cultivation even if the world's end came. Somewhere in the Emerald Kingdom, in a dark and gloomy black castle, rows of black crows stood on the roof court. Flocks of black crows circled in the dim yellow sky above the court. The castle exuded an oppressive aura of death. In the underground wine cellar of the castle, a gloomy, pale, and slender nobleman was tasting the wine he had collected for many years. He picked up a glass of blood-Roland wine and went to the castle's second-floor balcony. A red-eyed raven descended from the sky and landed on his shoulder. A letter was tied to its leg. Red-eyed ravens were pets that could send messages faster and more accurately than messenger pigeons. Only a few of them were in the organization, and they were mainly used to contact important clients or trusted members. He opened the letter. There was no signature inside. It read, "Esteemed Lord Pale Shadow, I didn't want to disturb you, an esteemed shadow assassin, by writing a letter. However, your organization has yet to reply to the mission I entrusted you some time ago. From the information I have so far, the person I want to eliminate seems alive and well. If your organization can't complete such a simple task, then I sincerely doubt your organization's professional standards. I'll give your organization one last chance. If you can't complete my mission, our cooperation may end. Sigh, the inheritance of the thousand-faced knight should not have failed like this." Seeing this, the pale-faced noble's expression darkened. He held the stone railing with his right hand, and black gas surged from his fingertips. From afar, it looked as if the fingernails of his right hand had suddenly grown long and turned into sharp fingernails like those of a vampire. The stone railings were deeply imprinted with scratches. A moment later, the pale noble wrote on the blank parchment with a quill. "Mobilize the Gold Assassin, Iron Mountain, and complete the assassination mission of Baron Levi. No matter what method you use, this mission must not fail. Pale Shadow." Then, the red-eyed raven flew off into the distance with the letter. The noble's expression was ugly. Even now, he still could not understand. How did Baron Levi survive 2 assassinations? The fantasy goblin knight was a bronze assassin, so it was acceptable that he failed. Knight Bernard was a silver assassin. Only 30 silver assassins were in the Bird of Death's voice, and each was highly precious. However, not only did Knight Bernard fail to assassinate him, He even died. Now, Pale Shadow did not know if Baron Levi himself had killed Knight Bernard or if he had external help. If it was the latter, he could still understand. If it was the former, then it was somewhat unbelievable. He muttered, 6 years ago, he was just a coward who threw away his armor and gave up his territory to save his life. 6 years, did he undergo such a huge change? As a shadow assassin of the Bird of Death's voice, one of the 5 shadows, he did not care about Baron Levi. In his opinion, the only thing he could remember about him was his identity as the son of the famous Black Snake Knight, but that was all. However, he had to protect his organization's reputation and maintain its high professional standards, especially since this client was a significant figure. Whether it was strength or power, he was almost at the top of the pyramid. And the Bird of Death's voice could not leave this cooperation, so he absolutely could not lose this customer. Iron Mountain had been a famous gold assassin in the organization. He was a 30-year-old high-level knight and an illegitimate son of a great noble. He practiced the family's excellent breathing technique. He might become a grand emite in the future. His overall strength ranked 5th among the 12 gold assassins in the organization. The 5 shadows of death must be mobilized if even Iron Mountain failed the mission. However, as the organization's leader, all his past targets had been at least an earl. If things progressed to the point where he had to assassinate a young boy personally, the Pale Shadow might need to consider the disbandment of the Bird of Death's voice. What a shame. They must stop embarrassing the thousand-faced knight. Chapter 57, Chapter 57, Siren Breathing Technique and Bone Shrinking Transformation. Chapter 57, Siren Breathing Technique and Bone Shrinking Transformation. In the year 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, during the month of warmth, the Blackwater Valley was vibrant with flowing water, lush green grass, blossoming flowers, and the buzzing of wild bees. The season of spring was in full bloom. On the fields of the valley plain, serfs were diligently carrying out spring plowing work. Last year, everyone experienced a rare harvest year. Under the leadership of Baron Levi, the overall situation was stable and good. Everyone felt that the future was bright. On the training ground, Sir Fred was training his soldiers. Almost half of the 50 full-time soldiers under Levi already had matching armor. Under his training, the soldiers were getting stronger. A few trustworthy elites had even cultivated the basic level of non-bloodline breathing techniques. The breathing technique was none other than the siren breathing technique that Levi had obtained. Although it was not a strength-type breathing technique, if these soldiers had mastered it, they would have had no problem fighting on the battlefield in armor. Moreover, they would be more agile and able to dodge more easily on the battlefield. Of course, there were not many people who practiced breathing techniques. Only 5 militia captains were elected as captains. They were talented and trustworthy confidants. Although Levi was rich now, he could not provide for all 50 soldiers to cultivate the breathing technique with the current financial situation of the territory. He could only train 5 of them for the time being. If the effect were noticeable, when he had money, he would gradually build this army under his command into an elite soldier fully equipped with war horses and armor and cultivate the siren breathing technique. Even if only one of the 50 advanced to become an official knight, it would still greatly help Levi. Although Levi could kill official knights quickly, that was because Elysia had many breathing techniques and powerful archery skills. Most of the more minor barons only had one official knight. All in all, Blackwater Valley's current financial strength and military power should be considered above average among all the barons in the kingdom. Levi did not delay his cultivation either. Today, he upgraded the siren breathing technique to the 4th level. Although both were all basic breathing techniques, unlike the Frost Wolf breathing technique, the siren breathing technique's 4th level was not the limit. It could continue to upgrade if he worked hard. Siren breathing technique, level 4, 1/20,000. Special effect, beginner speed, bone shrinking transformation, cannot be upgraded. Even if it's a shallow level skill, the siren breathing technique from the Bird of Death's voice should be better than the frost wolf breathing technique of the frost wolf family. Levi had only been practicing the siren breathing technique for less than 4 months, but he had already reached the limit of the technique. It seemed like he could cultivate it very quickly, but that was because Levi himself was an official knight. He also developed the black snake breathing technique and frost wolf breathing technique to the 4th rank. He achieved this with the proficiency panel and sufficient nutrition. The benefits of this breathing technique were considerable. This was because there was more than one special effect after the 4th level of this breathing technique. When Levi saw the proficiency panel, he was shocked. One had to know that the black snake breathing technique, an excellent level breathing technique, only had one special effect. The siren breathing technique was indeed extraordinary. Among the shallow breathing techniques, it should be of high quality. Otherwise, it would not have become the standard breathing technique of a powerful organization like the Bird of Death's voice. Naturally, there was no need to talk about beginner speed. This was the same as the beginner speed of the frost wolf breathing technique. It gave Levi a slight increase in speed, but not as much as Levi had imagined. Essentially, the breathing techniques possessed potent special effects. Through the frost wolf breathing technique, Levi harnessed the full potential of a shallow level 4 breathing technique, experiencing its maximum impact. Therefore, in terms of speed, unless the siren breathing technique advanced to level 5, it would be difficult for Levi to make any significant changes. However, Levi did not care about this. What he cared about was another special effect of the siren breathing technique. Bone shrinking transformation. By reasonably changing the position of the bones, the body will shrink within the limits of the body's endurance and increase the body's flexibility. This effect cannot be upgraded. If this special effect is used well, it can be used to save my life and counterattack, Levi muttered. This was similar to the bone shrinking technique in wuxia novels, which could change the size of one's body through bone shrinking. Body size was a problem that Levi paid attention to. He discovered that some breathing techniques, especially those focused on strength, had a unique feature. It made people's bodies inevitably bigger. For example, the Grand Knight of the Melon family, who practiced the giant breathing technique, had reached an impressive height of 3 meters. On the one hand, a large body meant terrifying strength and physique, but it also made one very obvious, reducing the body's agility. This bone shrinking transformation effect could have a miraculous impact at a critical moment. For example, it could prevent a fatal attack by making it more challenging for enemies to attack one's vital organs. Moreover, after changing one's body shape, one could also change his appearance appropriately. With some makeup and disguise techniques, one could completely change his appearance. If he did something shameful, this effect would be highly convenient. Besides the siren breathing technique, Levi's other skills improved significantly during this period. The progress bar of the black snake breathing technique had broken through the 10,000 mark. The amount of black gas Levi had now was much higher than before. 2 months ago, the black gas on his arm could only cover his palm. Now, Levi extended his arms and circulated the black snake breathing technique. The black snake that controlled the frost wolf seed and the black snake seed danced wildly at his heart, like Levi's second heart. Black gas flowed continuously into Levi's blood vessels, and finally, it poured into Levi's arms and palms. His veins turned black, like snake tattoos wrapped around his arm. A black gas full of texture slowly flowed on his arm, emitting a trace of metallic luster. White smoke filled the air. Levi could not help but admire his arm, full of metallic texture, and sighed, "What a beautiful body." He punched the wall of the shelter. The entire wall seemed to tremble, and some gravel fell off. Even an official knight wouldn't be able to withstand the power of my punch. The quantity and quality of my black gas and my body's strength constantly increase. Will there be a day when I don't need to use any cold weapons in the mortal world? To use my palms and legs to summon ripple force. I can break stone monuments and shatter armor at that time with a single palm strike. A bold idea suddenly popped up in Levi's mind, but he did not dare to try it yet. The ripple force was too overbearing. It would easily shatter his arm if he had no weapon to vent it out. Perhaps Levi could try it after he advanced to a grand knight. Chapter 58, Chapter 58, Man-Face Spider's Kiss and New Skill. Chapter 58, Man-Face Spider's Kiss and New Skill. Besides the black serpent breathing technique, his forging and golden cross slash significantly improved. However, he was still some time away from a breakthrough. In short, Levi believed he would become a mid-level knight before the end of the year. By then, his strength would have a significant leap. After cultivating his breathing techniques, Levi took out the man-face spider breathing technique. Levi had never cultivated it ever since he obtained the technique. Now that the siren breathing technique was at level 4, the special effect, shrink bone transformation, was also activated. Overall, he achieved the goal of cultivating the siren breathing technique. The next step was slowly reaching the 5th rank and upgrading the special effect, beginner speed, to intermediate speed. Now, Levi had the time to learn a new breathing technique. Between the giant bear breathing technique and the man-face spider breathing technique, Levi decided to prioritize the former. Although he could cultivate the man-face spider and giant bear breathing technique simultaneously, he had limited time. To quickly upgrade the man-face spider breathing technique to level 4, even if he spent some time learning the giant bear breathing technique, he did not have the time to level it up. After all, just the black snake, siren breathing technique, and golden cross slash would take up much of Levi's time, not to mention forging. If he cultivated too many breathing techniques simultaneously, it would sacrifice their quality, as he would be distracted. It was better to focus on one, quickly upgrade it to level 4 for a special effect, and then move on to the next. When he cultivated more breathing techniques in the future, his cultivation speed would become faster. He should be able to learn many breathing techniques at the same time. He was very interested in the perception of the man-face spider breathing technique. The red spider knight looked weak as she had no breathing techniques that focused on combat besides the man-face spider breathing technique. However, Levi was different. He had the level 4 black snake breathing technique, frost wolf breathing technique, siren breathing technique, and the powerful golden cross slash. He did not lack combat strength. He counted. There were 35 tiny figures on the man-face spider breathing technique. They surrounded the spider in all kinds of postures. During this period, Levi also discovered a pattern after cultivating more breathing techniques. The higher the quality of the breathing technique, the more little figures there would be on the breathing technique inheritance diagram. The black snake breathing technique had 71 tiny figures, while the siren breathing technique had 26. The frost wolf breathing technique, which was of the lowest quality, only had 16 little figures. The giant bear breathing technique that Levi had yet to cultivate had 19 tiny figures. Levi guessed there would be more tiny human figures if it were a perfect or even legendary breathing technique. At the same time, this would mean that the time and difficulty of cultivating would also skyrocket. Levi immersed his mind into cultivating the man-face spider breathing technique. This breathing technique was a bloodline breathing technique, and it would take some time to get started. When he was exhausted and could no longer cultivate, Levi started to study the secret poison recipe on the back of the man-face spider breathing technique inheritance diagram. This inheritance diagram contained 3 poison formulas and the corresponding antidote formulas. Levi had not had the time to study them before, but now that he did, he realized that the 3 poison formulas were all beneficial. The first was the man-face spider tears. This was the potent poison that the red spider knights used to poison the earthly dragon beast. It consisted of the venom of the ring-tailed sea snake, the saint scorpion tail, the red widow spider's tooth, the red-spotted lizard's tongue, the poison dart frog skin, and the throat-sealing fruit. These 6 precious materials were relatively difficult to obtain, though they could not compare to ambergris. Fortunately, some leftover materials were still in the bottles and jars on Red Spider Knight's chest. They should last for a long time. After all, Levi wanted to use them against humans, not the massive earthly dragon beast. Usually, he would not use such a large dosage. The second type was called man-faced spider breath. This poison was much less toxic than man-faced spider tears, but it was a volatile poison that was colorless and odorless. It could kill without a trace. If one took the antidote beforehand, they would be permanently immune to this poison. Levi believed it was also beneficial and essential for close combat. The third type was the man-faced spider's kiss. This poison was even more potent as it would remain hidden in the body for a lifetime once infected, and one had to take the antidote once every year. Otherwise, one would suffer the unfathomable pain of intense spider bites and die. As long as one took the treatment every year, one could survive. Levi felt that the third type of poison was the most valuable. He could use this poison to control others through their fear of death. The refinement of poisons was different from Levi's black snake secret medicine. To put it bluntly, the black snake secret medicine was just a mixture of raw materials. However, the 3 poisons required fundamental alchemy skills. Fortunately, the methods were recorded, and the Red Spider Knight wrote many notes. All of this was for Levi's benefit. Levi spent a few days preparing the equipment and various raw materials for refining poison. His shelter looked like the chemical laboratories or the home of evil witches in movies. Then, he began his first journey of refining poison. Of course, the poison that Levi was refining was not the man-faced spider's tears or man-faced spider's kiss. The ingredients for these 2 poisons were too rare and were not easy to obtain. He was bound to fail and waste many elements since it was his first attempt. In comparison, the ingredients for the man-faced spider breath were easy to find. They were all relatively common materials in the market, and the cost of refining one dosage was only about 1 silver coin. Levi could afford it. Levi put on the bird of death mask and lit the alcohol lamp. Blue flames rose. He began to heat the alchemy vessel and added the ingredients according to the steps listed. He controlled the temperature, stirred, and added water. Suddenly, there was a bang. Dust flew, and the hot liquid splashed everywhere. Fortunately, Levi was wearing the bird of death mask, so the poisonous liquid did not splash on his face. It exploded. I knew it. Levi did not give up. He cleaned up the trash and continued to work. He had prepared a lot of equipment anyway. Just like that, after failing 7 times, he finally succeeded in refining his first poison. At the bottom of the container, a ball of coarse salt-like powder crystallized. This was the man-faced spider's breath. When it burned, it would produce a colorless and odorless poisonous gas. It could also be directly sprinkled into the enemy's respiratory system like quicklime. At the same time, Levi, addicted to concocting potions, was surprised to discover something. A new skill appeared on his proficiency panel. Pharmacy, Level 1, 70/1000. Chapter 59, Chapter 59, The Fourth Breathing Technique. Chapter 59, The Fourth Breathing Technique. As expected, a new skill has been born. Although he had already guessed this would happen, Levi was still very excited. The next step is easy. Liver. Levi's entire body was filled with livers. The more livers he had, the more energetic he became. Even the Liver King from his previous life, who was also a member of the DNA, had to bow down to Levi. Each refinement only reaped a tiny amount of man-faced spider breath. He needed a larger dosage if he wanted it to be effective in battle unless it was minor. Thus, Levi continued to refine potions. The second portion, the third portion. He would cultivate breathing techniques when he got tired of refining medicine. Then, he would hone his sword skills. Next, he would forge iron. Finally, he would take a nice cold shower and sleep. This cycle of work and rest repeated itself. 7 days later, Levi had finally refined 100 portions of man-faced spider breath. It sounded like a lot, but it was just a bag of fist-sized powder. He stored the powder well. He could use the man-faced spider's breath instead of quicklime in the future. Quicklime could only be used to deal with commoners. It was not enough to deal with knights. This bag of powder should be enough for Levi for a while. At the same time, Levi's pharmacy skills had reached level 2. Pharmacy, level 2, 1/5000. I wonder what the maximum of this skill is. Forget it. After staying home for so long, it's time for some fresh air. Levi stood up. After cultivating the man-faced spider breathing technique for the past few days, he felt he was very close to mastering this skill, yet had still not succeeded. It could not be helped. This kind of bloodline breathing technique was slower to master. When he arrived at the training ground, Fred diligently trained the soldiers. He was even personally teaching a team leader sword skills. The team leader was Sam, who was previously terribly frightened by the mountain wolf. Although timid, this guy had some potential, especially under Fred's training. Most importantly, Sam was surprisingly talented in cultivating breathing techniques. Sam was the only successful among the 5 team leaders who cultivated breathing techniques in the territory, so Fred took extra care of him. His health was already deteriorating, and he hoped to train an official knight to assist Levi before he could no longer wield his sword. Sam was the one Fred had picked. Sam was currently also a shield-wielding attendant. Seeing that young Master Levi had left his shelter for fresh air, Fred asked the militia to train themselves. He ran over and said, "Young Master, have you made any progress in your cultivation recently?" Levi nodded and asked, "Fred, did you find the giant breathing technique?" Fred shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Young Master, there's been no clue so far. Most of the records about the Melon family seem to have been deliberately hidden. I guess the church may have erased the traces of the Melon family's existence. All right, continue searching. Be careful, don't let the church know," Levi said. The giant breathing technique was the key to his use of the frost giant armor. If he could use the frost giant armor, he was confident in surviving even if the opponent was a grand knight. More importantly, the third ability of the frost giant armor was a genuine spell. Levi believed that the power would not disappoint him. However, Levi was patient. Now, he had 3 4th-level breathing techniques, one of which was excellent. Levi had no idea what level his strength had reached. He only knew that he could fight Fred, a mid-level knight, to a draw with only half of his strength, and he could also subdue the 3 underage giant bear of the Northern Territory with his bare hands. "Fred, it's time to put the construction of our cavalry on the agenda. I feel that the next few years won't be peaceful. We need an elite cavalry, and we also need to expand the territory's population." Previously, the territory's financial income was tight, and Levi dared not execute his plans. He was not worried about ambergris for the time being, and he had 4,000 gold coins in his small treasury. With this money, he could try to strengthen the construction of the territory. On the one hand, he could increase the investment in the forging industry, on the other, he could invest in the military. He did not need to dominate the world, but he needed to have enough ability to protect himself and Fred. It's not easy to get war horses now. As far as I know, the great nobles in the kingdom have been stationing troops recently. The great nobles have contracted the main horse farms, said Fred. Levi responded, "It's okay. Just keep an eye out. Money is not a problem." With that, he went to forge. He had to hurry up and increase his forging experience to level 5. That way, he would not waste precious materials like the earthly dragon beast scales and instead forge his light and sturdy armor. This armor would be Levi's most important protective gear while waiting for the frost giant armor. Levi mastered the man-face spider breathing technique in 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the month of flowing fire. And within a month, he had raised the man-face spider breathing technique to level 3. Man-face spider breathing technique, level 3, 1/10,000. At this point, Levi had already mastered 4 breathing techniques. He did not want to be arrogant, but this accomplishment was rare in history. After all, bloodline alone was a huge barrier for many. Moreover, no one else could improve as quickly as Levi without the proficiency panel. The man-face spider breathing technique had no special effect after level 3. However, Levi could feel that his body's sensory ability was greatly enhanced. He could now sense the changes in temperature and airflow more acutely. Right now, Levi had no idea how strong he was. His black gas increased daily as his black snake breathing technique approached level 5. Previously, it could only cover his arms, but now, it covered his neck. He estimated that the black gas should be able to cover his head after he advanced to a mid-level knight. Fred still had no news about the giant breathing technique. If there were still no news after some time, he would go to the Shining Tavern to issue a commission. There were many capable people in the world who might have clues. However, there was a risk. At the end of the month of flowing fire, a tall and sturdy figure with a tower-like body appeared at the edge of Blackwater Valley's territory. He was wearing armor and riding a high-quality alpine warhorse. He looked at the peaceful scenery ahead of him. Hard-working people were weeding in the fields and fishing in the river. Everything was beautiful. My search was so long because this place is incredibly remote. The pale shadow made me come here to assassinate a little kid. The organization is regressing. The figure took a deep breath and hid the horse at one side. Then, his tall figure began to shrink, and crackling sounds could be heard. He efficiently killed a serf, changed his clothes, and walked toward the castle. He was Iron Mountain, one of the 12 gold assassins of the Bird of Deaths. Voice. Chapter 60, Chapter 60, Enough. Chapter 60, Enough. Black Snake Breathing Technique plus 21. Levi walked out of his breathing technique cultivation state. After replenishing food and water, he returned to the castle from the shelter. Seeing Levi appear, Sir Fred said, "Young master, I've contacted a good friend. He said that he has a good scarlet warhorse." "Oh, how much is it?" 40 gold coins, said Fred. Levi asked, "Sure, it's not very expensive, but I've never heard of this kind of warhorse. How does it compare to the famous alpine warhorse?" "My friend told me not to worry about that. The scarlet warhorses are produced on the Red Plateau, which was originally the land of the Blood Rage tribe. The Blood Rage tribe is brave and good at fighting, and a large part of the reason is that every Blood Rage tribe warrior is a top-tier cavalry with a high level of tacit cooperation with the Scarlet Warhorses. Therefore, the Scarlet Warhorses are not inferior to the Alpine Warhorses, and some aspects are even more outstanding. After the kingdom exterminated the Blood Raging tribe, their warhorse bloodline was preserved. However, the warhorses had the same ferocity as the Blood Raging tribe, and it was difficult to eradicate them. There were also cases of them stomping their masters to death in anger on the battlefield. Some people said this was the curse of the innocent Blood Rage clansmen killed by the kingdom. Only the brave and noble Blood Rage clan members could ride the red blood warhorses. So, a major noble bought and returned my friend's batch of scarlet warhorses. My friend told me to tell you that if you accept his horses, you can't return them, said Sir Fred, smiling bitterly. I see. This price is reasonable. Moreover, we don't have any other choice now. Let's buy 5 horses first. If they are good, we'll buy another 45 horses. Otherwise, "We'll bear the losses of these 5 horses," Levi said. With his beast-taming skill at the maximum and his wild heart special effect, Levi refused to believe that he would fail to tame these scarlet war horses. "All right, no problem," responded Sir Fred. Then, he turned around and left. Suddenly, a commotion arose from below. Levi frowned and looked out the window. Outside the castle, 2 soldiers escorted a serf into the palace. Fred said and went downstairs, "Young master, I'll go and take a look." "What's going on?" Fred questioned. "Sir Fred, this man peeped at the youngest daughter of the Jerry family as she bathed and was caught red-handed. We'll now hand him over to the Lord for trial." One of the soldiers was furious. The youngest daughter of the Jerry family was the goddess he had a crush on. He had initially planned to marry her after he had saved enough money. He did not expect that she would be taken advantage of by this pervert. Furious, he kicked the serf's waist. The serf lowered his head and cried out in pain. He touched his waist on the ground and said in fear, "My lord, no, I'm innocent. I didn't mean to peep. At that time, my chicken flew into Jerry's courtyard. I went to catch my chicken and accidentally saw her." The serf trembled and did not dare to look up. In the soldier's eyes, he was guilty and embarrassed. Levi narrowed his eyes and looked at the kneeling serf. After cultivating the man-faced spider-breathing technique, his perception of things was unusually sharp. He felt a familiar feeling from the serf. "Raise your head and tell me, what is your name?" Fred seemed to have noticed something strange. He pulled out his sword and pointed at the serf. In the next moment, the serf turned his hands into claws and grabbed at Sir Fred's legs. Sir Fred had already suspected it, so he dodged the serf's attack instantly. The serf took the opportunity to rise. His body rapidly changed and expanded like a balloon. His muscles bulged, and his veins popped. He grabbed the swords of the 2 soldiers beside him with his large hands covered in black gas. The 2 soldiers reacted very quickly. Discovering that the serf was an expert, they attacked immediately. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between them was too significant. He snatched the swords of the 2 soldiers with his bare hands and then attacked Fred with his 2-handed sword. All of this happened in a flash. In just a few rounds, Sir Fred, a mid-level knight, was cornered by the serf and attacked. Although Fred's swordsmanship was superior, he was still far inferior to Iron Mountain in terms of his cultivation and the quality of his breathing technique. Levi was on the 2nd floor. He quickly drew his bow and nocked an arrow. Bang, 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 bang. 4 straight arrows. All 4 arrows were shot precisely at the burly man. They all hit the back of the burly man, who did not fall. He sneered, completely ignoring the 4 arrows on his back. The sword in his right hand blocked Sir Fred's attack. The sword in his left hand stabbed into Sir Fred's abdomen. Sir Fred's ripple force followed the long sword and broke the long sword that the burly man tried to block. At the same time, his long sword broke. This made Fred cry out in alarm for a moment. He stabbed his broken sword at the burly man. The muscular man did not dodge. His black palm grabbed Sir Fred's broken sword, and its ripple force brought extreme pain. Sir Fred thought that the bones in his hand were broken. But that was only a minor injury. The burly man pierced Sir Fred's abdomen using this frantic fighting style. But at this moment, the soldiers had already surrounded him. Their archery skills were not good, and they were afraid of accidentally injuring Sir Fred, so they did not dare to shoot. On the other side, the fully armed Levi also jumped from the building. The soldiers behind him surrounded the burly man, who knew he would block the injured Sir Fred. Levi and the other knights hesitated in shooting arrows. Then, a grappling hook shot out from his sleeve and hooked to the city wall. He hugged Sir Fred and looked at Levi with a smile. "Do you dare to chase me?" Levi's face was gloomy. This man was mighty. In just a few moves, he had subdued Sir Fred. he was at least a high-level knight or even a peak knight. This rank was second only to a grand knight. And the familiar hook. This person was, undoubtedly, from the Bird of Death's voice. Team leader Sam asked anxiously, "My lord, what should we do?" 10 people, follow me. Sam, you take some people to guard the castle and maintain order. Be careful of other enemies. Then, Levi went to the bear pen and rode Little White. Then, he brought the other two and ran out of the city gate. He needed to use the three brothers' sense of smell to track the enemy. Of course, the three brothers could also provide him with great help in battle. Bird of Death's voice. Regardless of whether Fred lived or died, Levi could not tolerate it anymore. He had had enough. He was now qualified to start resisting. Chapter 61, Chapter 61, Bloody Battle. Chapter 61, Bloody Battle. Although Sir Fred was only Levi's retainer, he could not give up on him yet. Moreover, Levi had to end things with the Bird of Death's voice. Otherwise, there would be no end to it, and he would not be able to live peacefully. The enemy was an expert who had cultivated 2 breathing techniques at the same time. He was much more potent than the previous assassins. However, Levi believed that with his 4 breathing techniques and the various methods he had cultivated, the other party might not be his match. He rode Little White and wandered through the forest. He often came to hunt in this forest, so he was very familiar with the terrain. Soon, Levi saw the stout man. The burly man's right palm was hanging down as if seriously injured. Blood flowed non-stop, and black gas filled the air. He threw aside Fred. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Levi calmed himself down. Riding on the giant bear, he asked calmly, "Sir, before I kill you, can you tell me who your client is? Who is so cowardly and despicable that he has to ask you to kill an underage child time and time again?" Iron Mountain shrugged and said sinisterly, "I don't know, but you're wrong about one thing. You should be the one who died." Then, Iron Mountain shot out like a cannonball. He did not even use a weapon. Instead, he smashed his left fist wrapped in black gas toward Levi. Levi pulled out Frostmourne and jumped up from the bear. A golden cross slash filled with killing intent. Ripples appeared in the void. Ripple slash. Iron Mountain's expression changed slightly. Sir Fred's attack had shattered his right palm. He had not expected that the Dawn swordsman would be able to use such an attack and that even a brat like Levi could use such exquisite sword skills. Therefore, Iron Mountain, who initially wanted to use his powerful physical body to take down Levi, dodged Levi's attack. Seeing this, Levi sneered and hurled his sword techniques at Iron Mountain like a storm. At the same time, the 3 brothers also attacked Iron Mountain. While dealing with Iron Mountain, a few soldiers carried Fred and brought him to the doctor at the foot of the mountain, according to Levi's instructions. Levi did not know if Fred could survive after suffering such serious injuries. After all, medical technology was limited in this world, and the assassin's attacks were extremely heavy. He would chop this man into pieces and avenge Fred. The 3 brothers, Little Fatty, bellowed. His terrifying bear paw swatted toward Iron Mountain, who did not dodge. The black gas on his arm was thick. The bear claws could only leave scratches, causing some minor superficial injuries. Levi also noticed that the arrowheads on Iron Mountain's back had only pierced through his muscles and not further. Since they were on his back, he did not care about the blood flowing out. His chest and back were covered in wounds. To him, this was an honor. Iron Mountain's moves were broad, and each palm strike contained infinite power. He was nimble and could still do it easily under the siege of Levi and the 3 brothers. The terrifying thing was that the black gas spread out from Iron Mountain's upper body from his waist up. The black gas in some parts was like asphalt, slowly flowing and extremely thick. Whether it was the bear claws or Levi's regular sword attacks, he dodged or took them head on. That should be an excellent breathing technique. At this moment, Levi realized how unreasonable it was for him to use the black snake breathing technique on those shallow breathing techniques. The clothes on Levi's upper body were already tattered, and his chainmail was exposed. It was also torn, revealing the black gas on his arms and neck. Iron Mountain said while attacking, trying to distract Levi, as expected of the black snake's descendant. Your breathing technique is not bad but still insufficient. What a pity. Such a good seedling is going to die. Levi gritted his teeth, and the 4 breathing techniques in his body were all running at high speed. Other than the man-face spider breathing technique, which had yet to reach level 4, the black gas produced by the different breathing techniques were all swimming around Levi's body. The 3 life seeds were beating violently in his heart. Every move of the golden cross slash was deadly. Not long after, Levi's Frostmourne wailed in pain, unable to withstand Levi's high-intensity ripple force, and shattered. Iron Mountain's body was also covered in wounds, and the deep wounds could be seen. You don't even have your sword. What are you going to use to fight me? Iron Mountain used black gas to heal his wounds and dodged Little White, who was pouncing on him. Then, he slapped away a soldier trying to sneak attack him. That soldier was sent flying 10 meters away and crashed into a tree. No one knew if he was dead or alive. With a sinister smile, he charged toward Levi once again. Levi pulled out his black snake dagger. Die. Tisk. Iron Mountain grabbed the dagger that Levi was thrusting toward him. Under Levi's ripple force, the sharp dagger cut through Iron Mountain's black gas protection, leaving a deep wound on his palm. A numbing sensation came from the injury. Ha! You used poison. Iron Mountain sneered and punched Levi's chest. The force of this punch penetrated through the 2 layers of chainmail Levi wore, directly causing the armor inside to be deformed and dented. Levi was sent flying backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, he raised his hands. A handful of white powder flew toward the burly man. Iron Mountain's hands covered his eyes quickly. Good boy, you learned our Bird of Death's voice unique skill, sprinkling quicklime. Iron Mountain subconsciously covered his eyes, however, he accidentally inhaled some quicklime powder through his mouth and nose. Levi did not say anything, he felt as if that punch had broken his ribs, the black snake seed and the other life seeds had almost reached their limits. Iron Mountain was also panting heavily. Although there were no fatal injuries, all kinds of wounds had caused him to bleed significantly. The first sword attack from Sir Fred even directly injured his right palm. He had just been forcefully using his heavily damaged right palm to fight. Even if he killed Levi, it would likely be crippled. Despite his high-level knight physique, it would still be impossible for him to recover his right palm, as it was almost shattered. He was furious and wanted to twist Levi's head off right now. The 3 brothers dragged their injured bodies and stood before Levi, baring their teeth at Iron Mountain. Little Fatty charged forward again. The few still alive soldiers also shot arrows at the man. Of course, it was useless. They were either pushed aside or missed. Not long after, the 3 brothers were again beaten to the ground. Even with their muscular physiques, they were still fragile. Iron Mountain had torn off a lot of their fur. Levi dragged his injured body and once again faced Iron Mountain. I will twist off your head, then. Then, Iron Mountain suddenly felt dizzy. His vitality declined, and the blood vessels all over his body burst. Blood began to seep out. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. Touching the nosebleed, he wanted to say something but fell directly to the ground. Seeing this, Levi ordered his soldiers to shoot a round of arrows at Iron Mountain, which ended up resembling a porcupine. He then picked up the broken Frostmourne and cut off all 4 limbs of the burly man. Bathed in blood, he panted heavily as he looked at the blood-stained battlefield. Under his calm appearance, endless anger burned. Idiot, that's not quicklime. Chapter 62, Chapter 62, Medicine Production and Giant Bear. Chapter 62, Medicine Production and Giant Bear. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand just a sniff of the man-faced spider's breath, but this guy consumed quite a bit and could still fight. Levi had already taken the antidote for the man-faced spider breath. Once he took the antidote, he would be immune to it for life. Levi would not have to worry about this poison in the future. After crippling the man's limbs, Levi had the doctor bandage his wounds and had the soldiers tie him up with layers of iron chains and even put shackles on him. He would not let him die so quickly. He was still burning in anger. Levi did not care who had entrusted this organization to kill him. He only wanted to destroy it. This person was strong and had a high status in the organization. Levi felt that he could make a fuss about him. After returning to the territory, Levi ordered the soldiers to take the assassin into the castle's prison. He first went to the doctor to visit Sir Fred. Sir Fred's abdomen had been pierced through. With the medical standards of this world, he was in danger. Levi looked at Fred, who was on the verge of death. He reached out and touched him. He was still breathing. "Can he be saved?" Levi asked. The doctor responded with difficulty, "I'll try my best, my lord. In this case, it's more dependent on Sir Fred's physique." "Okay, just tell me if you need anything. Money is not a problem if you can save Fred's life. I will also try to contact the doctors in the big cities." He heard that some priests in big cities' churches had mastered superb medical skills. Although the medical standards in this world were low, some medicines were refined from precious medicinal herbs. These herbs were similar to the heavenly treasures in Elysia novels in his previous life. In a sense, ambergris was a natural treasure. After all, it could increase the speed of cultivation. However, the church firmly controlled these medicines' knowledge, formulas, and raw materials. They called these medicines sacred medicines bestowed by the saints. The church used them to amass wealth and earn much money. Although Levi did not like to deal with people from the church, he had to ask someone from the church in the Icewine City branch for Fred's sake. It might just cost a lot of money. Levi naturally refused to go to old Abraham. He knew that the old man was obsessed with power and money and did not know much about medicine. In the year 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, month of the furnace, after a month of recovery and rest, with Levi's powerful physique and some medicine, his body had almost recovered. "I still have to wear armor. Even if I have a defensive breathing technique, isn't it nice to have an extra layer of defense?" Levi could not help but rejoice. He might have been seriously injured if it wasn't for the armor. In short, just like playing games, the stacked armor style would always have a place no matter which genre of game. Although he was injured this month, he slowly cultivated his breathing techniques. The day the black snake breathing technique broke through to the 5th level was getting closer. He had also mastered the giant bear breathing technique and reached the 3rd level. The difficulty of this breathing technique was lower than the siren breathing technique and the man-faced spider breathing technique. It was of similar difficulty as the frost wolf breathing technique. To Levi, it was not difficult to cultivate. The secret medicine of the giant bear breathing technique was also as simple and crude as the frost wolf breathing technique, which was bear blood. The stronger the bear, the better it was. This was not a problem for Levi. He had 3 giant bears of the Northern Territory waiting to be fed. They were massive and ate a lot. Naturally, they did not mind that Levi took turns drawing some blood from them every day. Levi's current speed of gaining experience was much faster than before. With the giant bear breathing technique reaching level 3, Levi felt that his strength, which was not small, to begin with, had increased significantly. A breathing technique focused on strength was indeed worthy. The next step was to reach level 4 slowly. It's a piece of cake for me to cultivate the shallow level of the breathing technique with the secret medicine and full power. I can reach level 4 in 3 months. Besides the giant bear breathing technique, Levi's other breathing techniques improved significantly. It would not take long for the black snake breathing technique to advance to the 5th level. Levi's primary breathing technique, the black serpent breathing technique, was the foundation of his strength. An excellent breathing technique was equivalent to stacking many shallow breathing techniques. Most importantly, the upper limit of the excellent level breathing technique was even higher. A shallow level breathing technique would not be able to break through to the Grand Knight level. On the other hand, Levi was also impressed by the usefulness of the man-faced spider breath. During this period, he refined several dosages as backup, allowing his pharmacy skill to reach level 3 quickly. Level 3 was not the limit of this skill. It seemed it was also a skill with an extreme growth limit, just like forging. Now that I'm already at level 3, I can start trying to make man-faced spider tears and man-faced spider's kiss. Because the materials for these two poisons were rare, Levi did not dare to refine them before, afraid of wasting them. With his pharmacy skills, he could be considered an expert and was no weaker than the Red Spider Knight. Refining the other two more powerful poisons was also on the agenda. Levi went to the doctor. After a month of treatment, Fred barely managed to keep his life. He spent 400 gold coins buying medicine that could heal such severe injuries from the Church of Holy Light in the Icewind City. The ingredients of this medicine were precious, and their effects were also excellent. Fred's injuries had stabilized, and with his mid-level knight physique, it should not be a problem for him to stay alive. However, whether or not he could recover would depend on the kindness of the Heavenly Father. If Levi became a wizard one day, there was a high chance he could use magic to heal Fred. However, he did not know if Fred could last until the day Levi became a wizard. Levi's face was gloomy after visiting Fred. Alone, he went to the underground prison of the Black Snake Castle, which was used to imprison criminals. It had not been used in the past as the territory's residents were still decent and kind. Only one criminal was imprisoned here. The Bird of Death's voice assassin. That guy had been poisoned and had his limbs crippled, but he was still alive. Levi could not help but admire his powerful body. His face was pale and covered in wounds. He was chained and nailed to the wall. Seeing Levi arrive, he said hoarsely, "Why didn't you kill me?" Chapter 63, Land of Rust Lake and Giant Iron Crocodile. Chapter 63, Land of Rust Lake and Giant Iron Crocodile. Levi sat at the side and ate his roasted meat as he spoke indifferently, "Believe me, if killing you can make Fred better, I will kill you 10,000 times." The burly man cursed, "You sure have big words. You despicable scoundrel who used poison. Didn't I learn this from you, scum?" Levi said. "I swear on the Heavenly Father that I, Iron Mountain, have been an assassin for many years, but I've never used poison. Although I'm an assassin, I'm also a knight, and I yearn for a fair battle, unlike you, cursed Iron Mountain." Levi mocked, "You're already an assassin, don't pretend to be a noble here. No proper knight will be an assassin? Judging from your breathing technique, it should be of excellent quality. Could you be the illegitimate son of some earl?" He did not know his simple words would hit Iron Mountain's sore spot. "You're the illegitimate child. Your entire family is illegitimate. So what if I'm an illegitimate child? I'm still the most outstanding genius of the younger generation of the D*MN Aryan family." Levi's expression changed slightly. The Aryan family was an earl family famous for producing iron ore. Their territory was located north of Rust Lake. Their clan emblem was the giant iron crocodile. In the legends, the giant iron crocodile was a terrifying beast that had occupied Rust Lake in ancient times. Its entire body was covered in scales that seemed to be made of steel. This was a powerful family because their leader was the Iron Knight, one of the Northern Seven Flying Cavalry. Like Levi's father, Iron Knight was also a Grand Knight. No wonder Iron Mountain was so strong. He looked only 30 years old, but he was already at least a high-level knight. He could also master such a powerful breathing technique. Iron Mountain was dissatisfied with the Aryan family because of his identity as an illegitimate child. Levi guessed that it was most likely related to power. After all, illegitimate children could not inherit the family's title, and Iron Mountain thought he was their family's youngest genius. Ostracized, he joined the Bird of Death's voice and became an assassin. However, Levi did not care about these words at all. He only wanted Iron Mountain to tell him the name of the significant client behind him. However, no matter how he tortured him, he kept crying in pain and claimed he knew nothing. In the end, Levi gave up. He now understood that Sir Bernard was not lying. Only the higher UPS of their organization knew about the identity of the big client. Though Iron Mountain claimed to be an excellent gold assassin with immense power, he was still not a high-ranking organization member. According to Iron Mountain, only 5 higher UPS were in the organization. That was the Shadow Assassin. It was also the 5 Shadows of Death. The one in charge of commanding Iron Mountain was Pale Shadow, whom Iron Mountain had only heard of but had never seen before. A mysterious Grand Knight whose true identity was unknown. Apart from that, Iron Mountain knew nothing. Damn it, I'm still too weak. Levi muttered, why don't I kill all the assassins and cut off all possible dangerous factors? In prison, Iron Mountain was panting heavily. Sweat poured down his body like rain, and his face was pale. Kill me, give me a quick death. Iron Mountain's eyes were lifeless. Levi had already tormented him to the point of insanity. Levi knew that he would not be able to get anything out of Iron Mountain. He ended his sinful life and burned his body to keep the incident a secret. In the fire, Levi again saw the shadow of a ferocious crocodile that had disappeared in a flash. His expression was gloomy until the man turned into ashes. A few days later, a serf found a starving and emaciated alpine warhorse in one of the territories and offered it to Levi. It was an armed warhorse. Levi checked the warhorse and found that besides malnourishment, there was nothing wrong with it. This warhorse belonged to Iron Mountain. He even found a small cloth bag under the harness. There were a few hundred gold coins, some dry food, and water. In addition, there was also a book, The Tribute of Shadows, and a Bird of Death mask, which were the same as the ones Levi had obtained before. Iron Mountain seemed to also believe in the Shadow Lord. Behind it was the siren breathing technique that Levi had already learned. Unfortunately, it did not have Iron Mountain's breathing technique that Levi wanted. That was a defensive breathing technique comparable to the black snake breathing technique. What is this? Levi found a piece of parchment and opened it. It was a map. A map of the northern part of the Emerald Kingdom. He had such a precious item. Levi was delighted. This was a surprise. Although Levi was very doubtful about the accuracy of this map given the technology level of this world, the fact that Iron Mountain could find the Blackwater Valley based on this map showed that it was accurate. More importantly, Levi saw some information he needed on the map. Levi muttered as he looked at the map, "There's a stronghold for the Bird of Death. Oh, there's one in Icewind City. There are 3 official knights stationed there. They act as training instructors for apprentices and teaching assassination techniques, and at the same time, they're responsible for contacting the assassins in Icewind City." He felt it was time for this D***net organization to pay the price for trying to kill him thrice. But before that, he had to cultivate the black snake breathing technique to the 5th level. At the same time, he was also worried that if the Pale Shadow had known that the assassination attempt this time failed, he would personally kill him. Yikes! I must cultivate my breathing techniques. At the same time, the territory has to be prepared for war and attacks to prevent the Iron Mountain situation from happening again. The most troublesome part about the Bird of Death's voice was that many of its members had cultivated the siren breathing technique. They could change their body shape and sneak in through disguises. He might be able to notice some abnormalities, but it would be difficult for ordinary soldiers and civilians to discover them. However, Levi could not think of a good solution. He could only try to increase his cultivation before the enemy arrived. The year 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar is the month of Wheatfield, the golden wheat season. The serfs in the territory began to work on the autumn harvest. The forging industry was still developing like a raging fire. However, many iron pieces that could be used to forge armor have been collected in the warehouse. This was because the lord responsible for forging the armor had been elusive recently and rarely showed his face in public. Levi naturally could not care less about forging now. After successfully concocting man-face spider tears and man-face spider kiss, he no longer wasted time on homing his forging and pharmacy skills. There was nothing more crucial to him than cultivating his breathing techniques now. Chapter 64, 4th level. Chapter 64, 4th level. Putting aside everything else, Levi focused on cultivating breathing techniques. He also temporarily stopped producing the golden cross slash. The beginner ripple force was enough. Finally, at the end of the month of Wheatfield, the giant bear breathing technique Levi had cultivated was the first to reach level 4. Giant bear breathing technique, level 4, maximum. Special effect, beginner strength. Beginner strength, your strength is unique. You have more substantial explosive power. You can wrestle with giant bears and kill wild cows with your bare hands. As expected, the breathing technique with fewer miniature figures is easier to cultivate. In addition to the support of bear blood, the secret medicine, the giant bear breathing technique has become my second breathing technique reaching maximum level. Though impressive, Levi felt that such progress was expected. Especially since the bear blood medicine he used did not belong to an ordinary bear. It was the blood of a giant bear of the Northern Territory that could be comparable to a knight when it reached adulthood. Therefore, such progress was expected. Same old rules, use the three brothers for practice. Levi got up and went to the castle through the secret passage. He then went to the bear pen of the three brothers. Little White, come here. Levi waved his hand, and Little White came over obediently. They were almost 4 years old and weighed more than a ton. They had reached the mass limit of giant brown bears from his previous life, though their strength was significantly more potent. In particular, their mighty strength and physique made Levi somewhat envious. In the previous battle with Iron Mountain, if it weren't for the three brothers, Levi might not have been able to defeat Iron Mountain. They had almost recovered from the injuries that Iron Mountain had inflicted on them under Levi's meticulous care and their powerful self-healing abilities. All in all, the three brothers were now at the level of low-level knights. When they matured, they would generally have the combat strength of mid-level knights. The three brothers were already more potent than male bears and comparable to high-level or peak knights. When these three fellows fully mature, they will significantly help Levi. The Alpine Warhorse cavalry would be weak. The giant bear of the Northern Territories cavalry was the best. Therefore, Levi insisted on feeding these three good-for-nothings despite the cost. Mother Dragon could conquer the world with 3 dragons, while I, Levi, could conquer the world with 3 giant bears of the Northern Territory. Little White, bite this end of the rope. Then, Levi threw a thick hemp rope to Little White. Little Fatty and Little Gray came over to watch. Little Fatty even still wanted to try, but Levi stopped it. Wait a minute. If Little White can't beat me in a tug of war, you two can join, said Levi. This time, Little White was not happy. It was the giant bear of the Northern Territory. Although he was still a child, Levi had also not matured into adulthood. Levi wanted to test if bear wrestling within the beginner strength was true. I hope the interface didn't lie to me. As he pulled the rope back, Levi said, let's begin, Little White. Little White bit the rope and retreated. Strictly speaking, this was an unfair competition. After all, Little White weighed a ton. Even if it did not use any strength, It could crush Levi. Levi was 1.9 meters tall, and his weight had reached more than 300 pounds due to the high-density breathing technique he cultivated. However, compared to Little White, he was still smaller. However, Levi himself was a low-level knight, close to a mid-level knight. With his black snake breathing technique at the 4th level, his giant bear breathing technique at the maximum level, his multiple breathing techniques, and the special effect beginner's strength, he was not wholly defenseless. Puff. A man and bear painted heavily as they wrestled. Levi's muscles bulged, and on the surface of his heart, the giant bear breathing technique was actively pouring black gas that represented power into Levi's arms and core area. Although the black snake breathing technique, frost wolf breathing technique, and siren breathing technique were not specialized in strength, they were all at level 4 and were sufficient for Levi. Levi's face was flushed, and Little White's nostrils were emitting heat waves and white steam. In the end, Levi was still slightly inferior to Little White after 5 minutes. In terms of pure strength, even though his giant bear breathing technique was at its maximum level, it was still quite inferior to the giant bear of the Northern Territory, a heavyweight beast with extraordinary talent. It seems like the description of special effect refers to the ordinary giant bears, not the king of bears like the giant bear of the Northern Territory. Nonetheless, this strength is enough to sweep away most people. Levi was delighted with this effect. He did not waste any time and returned to the shelter. After resting and adjusting, he began practicing the breathing technique again. The giant bear breathing technique already reached its limit, so Levi looked at the other breathing techniques. The man-face spider breathing technique was slightly more than 1,000 proficiency points away from reaching level 4. Hence, he focused on this. Without the secret medicine and the higher difficulty level than the giant bear breathing technique, the cultivation speed of this breathing technique was slightly slower. However, Levi was now too familiar with cultivation, so it was still very smooth. In the year 1007 of the Holy Brilliance calendar, the month of harvest, wheat production in the Blackwater Valley increased by about 10% compared to the previous year. At the beginning of the year, Levi had spent a lot of human resources and resources to reclaim more farmland. He also let the serfs use some natural organic fertilizers, increasing production. However, due to the limitations of this world's agricultural technology, the key to improving agriculture still depended on the cultivated land area and the farm population. The current population in Levi's territory could not keep up with the territory's economic development. While encouraging childbirth was possible, the ultimate aim was quickly replenishing new blood. Under normal circumstances, lords would increase their population by enfeoffment, buying and selling serfs, or taking in refugees fleeing disasters. However, Levi's place was remote. Even if refugees escaped, they would run to more affluent areas and rarely come here. Levi could only buy serfs. In this era, the sale of serfs was a common occurrence. Levi had his subordinates go to the serf market in Icewind City to buy a batch of serfs. Most were refugees who had lost their homes because of the war, and many were injured. However, Levi had no choice. The healthy, robust, and high-quality serfs were in high demand and contracted by the nobles. Therefore, it was fine as long as they had no infectious diseases. The butler arranged for these people to work in the mill, iron ore, and various other jobs. Levi did not leave his house. He hid in the shelter and practiced his breathing techniques. Other times, he strengthened his defense against the bird of death's voice and the mastermind who wanted to kill him. One day in the shelter, Levi opened his eyes. His eyes were bright, and the hair on his arms stood on end. Man-faced spider breathing technique, 4th level. Chapter 65, Chapter 65, Beginner Vibrosensing and Spider Sensing. Chapter 65, Beginner Vibrosensing and Spider Sensing. Man-faced spider breathing technique, level 4, 1/20,000. Special effect. Beginner Vibrosensing, Spider Sensing. Good heavens, The man-faced spider breathing technique also has two special effects. Levi could not help but be shocked. He placed his thoughts on the proficiency panel. Beginner vibrosensing, every hair and inch of your skin will become your eyes. They can capture the subtle vibrations of gases, liquids, and solid objects from all directions. The current sensing range for gases is 10 meters. The sensing range for liquids and solid objects will increase accordingly. How powerful! What a heaven-defying ability! This man-faced spider breathing technique should be the most special breathing technique I've seen so far, Levi muttered in shock. Such an ability was beyond his imagination. He closed his eyes and placed his hand on the shelter's wall. The hair on his back stood and brushed against the wall. In an instant, Levi's mind was filled with various noises. There was the sound of snow rabbits grazing in the bushes, gophers digging holes and a breeze blowing across the grass. This information entered Levi's mind, allowing him to sense the movements from above without even having to check. Levi laughed out loud. This is heaven-defying. This is the true transcendence. This breathing technique was more precious than all the others he had obtained before, except for the black snake breathing technique. This special effect is too heaven-defying. The red spider knight was too weak. She did not have the strength to use this special effect. However, this special effect was given to Levi. If he re-encountered Iron Mountain, he could easily predict and use his high speed to dodge Iron Mountain's attack based on the airflow fluctuations caused by his opponent's punches and movements. Too powerful. This is amazing. I can't believe this breathing technique belongs to me. Levi could not help but slap his thigh. Oh right, there's another special effect. Levi continued to look at the second special effect. Spider sensing, you have an intuitive sense of danger. This sense can alert you, help you avoid risk, turn misfortune into good luck, and avoid calamities. However, this sense is only general and not accurate. This special effect cannot be leveled up, but its accuracy will increase as your strength increases. Levi looked at the introduction of spider sense on the interface. My goodness! Isn't this a superpower? Wasn't this similar to Spider-Man's spider sense? Of course, it could be a low-end version. Even so, Levi was still excited. The two special effects of the man-faced spider breathing technique were the kind he believed to be at the transcendent level, abilities that exceeded the imagination of ordinary people. Red Spider Knight did not deserve to possess such a powerful breathing technique. With these two heaven-defying special effects, Levi's strength increased drastically. As expected, cultivation should be inclusive. All techniques can be learned as long as one is determined. Right now, I don't have any more breathing techniques. Next, I can consider auctioning off more bloodline breathing techniques at the Shining Auction. The quality doesn't need to be too high, just the shallow level is enough. After all, Levi's shallow breathing technique could be mastered in a few months, and he could master several in a year. As for non-bloodline breathing techniques, Levi did not consider them. They were too expensive and unnecessary. On the contrary, the bloodline breathing technique, which others thought was useless, was the most suitable. After upgrading the man-faced spider's breathing technique, Levi went to the bear pen to test his moves with the three brothers. Levi used earplugs to block his ears and a mask for his eyes to lose hearing and vision. Come, you three brothers, attack together, but be gentle. Levi was worried that he would not be familiar with it the first time and be accidentally injured by the three brothers. Seeing this, little Fatty, eager to spar with Levi, roared and rushed towards him. He slapped his paws, and the other two brothers attacked Levi from all directions. Just like that, Levi, who had yielded his sight and hearing, faced the attacks of the three giant bears of the Northern Territory, whose skills were comparable to knights. Levi muttered in his heart, left. Although his vision was dark, he could still sense the attack from the left using the fine hair on the back of his hand and face. He circulated his frost wolf breathing technique and siren breathing technique to the maximum level and dodged the attack from Little Fatty. Then, his palm, which was covered in black gas, pushed Little Fatty away like Tai Chi. Little Fatty, who lacked time to brake, crashed into Little White, who was rushing over from the other side. Little White fell to the ground. The two guys were dizzy. They did not imagine their master could beat them up with his eyes closed. Levi jumped high and dodged Little Gray's attack from behind. He then kicked his butt. Bump! Little Gray landed on the ground like a wild goose, sliding forward for some distance. Levi laughed out loud, "This feels great." He stood with his hands behind his back like a martial arts grandmaster. Opening his arms, the mountain wind blew. He sensed the sound transmitted in the wind and the aura of all things in nature. Although he could not see, this was the first time he felt so familiar with this world. After bidding farewell to the three brothers, Levi stretched his muscles. Let's continue. The black snake breathing technique is slightly away from the 5th level. I'll get a rest once I've reached the 5th level. In the past few months, Levi's cultivation had almost reached the limits of his body. Without the secret medicine, a lot of nutritional support, and Levi's strong willpower, he would have become a lunatic long ago. A disciplined life was highly fulfilling. After 3 assassinations, Levi could not take it anymore. All he wanted now was to become more powerful and take revenge quickly. He had to teach the bird of death's voice a lesson. The month of harvest passed quickly. Up until now, the Blackwater Valley was peaceful and quiet. At the end of the month, the doctors also received good news. Sir Fred, who had been in a coma for several months, woke up. Levi stopped cultivating and came to Fred's side. After this severe injury, this knight seemed to have aged even more. In his early 50s, his black hair had already turned white, his lips were pale, and his vitality was declining even faster than an ordinary knight on the decline. Even though Levi had bought the sacred medicine from the church and saved Fred's life, he knew that Fred's strength as a mid-level knight was no longer present. Fred smiled bitterly, "It's good that you're all right, young master. It's good that you're okay. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be chided by your father when I see him." Fred's rough palm held Levi's big hand, and he could not help but mutter, "Fred, I'm very well. From now on, you only need to be responsible for recuperating. I hope that one day, you can accompany me to witness the rise of the Black Snake again and make our enemies pay for their sins." Part 4 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.